July 17, 2024 meeting of the Project Review Board. We have everybody, all the board members in attendance. The first item of business is review and approval of the May 15 minutes.
Or info exchange, whatever.
I want to do mine first.
Okay.
I move we accept them as written.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Abstain.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me. We're talking about the May minute. The May
You were
minutes.
here.
No, yeah, we're good on the May
Hand up?
minute.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
Info exchange.
Are we doing the other one, or we're waiting?
Minutes or, I don't know.
I think we only, did we get the second set?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Email.
You got it later, so if not everyone had time to read it, you could table it till next month.
I propose we table it till the next meeting, okay?
Okay, I read it.
All right.
Okay, so that was approving May 15th, tabling June.
Can I ask a question? Are these lights on like a dimmer? Because they just turned them, they're really hot. As soon as they turned them on, it's really warm.
They
from the
are
lights.
not. It is so we all look good on cable TV.
Great.
And people are watching.
Okay.
This is important, Linda.
It's like, yes.
Okay, info exchange?
So information exchange. The planning board continues to work on the comprehensive plan. They recently adopted some amendments to the existing cannabis land use regulations, and they did have an initial, which was an applicant-driven request. They also had an initial discussion on an amendment to the industrial one zone, which is kind of on Lower Main Street on both sides, where LOB and AEC Engineering, and I think one of the old Bingley Press or some other building back there, Eastland Shoe. So they're going to be looking at considering changing the buffering requirements in that district. They'll have a public hearing next month. Update on the design review ordinance. As you know, we have entered into a contract with North Star Planning. They bring a team, interdisciplinary team, including architectural historian, landscape architect. They have started the work and met with staff on their first findings of questions and initial ordinance review. Part of that scope of work was a joint workshop with the project review board and the planning board to get feedback and thoughts and ideas on the existing design review ordinance and to kind of discuss some targeted items based upon what they found out so far. I've spammed you multiple times on this, but just in case you missed it, Wednesday, August 7th, there will be a joint workshop in this room at 4 o'clock to 5:30 with the planning board and project review board and the consultants from North Star Planning regarding the work on the design review ordinance update. They'll be looking to get some feedback on just, your thoughts on the current ordinance. We'll also be inviting the Central Core Working Group and the Housing Committee. Of course, public meeting, anybody is welcome to attend, but save the date for that. And then the comprehensive plan update, the planning board continues to work on the comp plan. Thank you to everyone that came to our first community workshop at the Freeport Community Center. We probably, not including board and committee members, we think we probably had 75 people at least at the meeting. We had a pretty good turnout. We just closed the results of the survey. We've had about, I think, 446 people respond to the online and paper surveys that we sent out. That's one of the things we're going to use to inform the new vision of the comp plan. We have 3 more meetings coming up where we want the community to come and give input. We'll be doing a meeting in September, October, and November, and then we'll give everybody a break. So Monday, September 23rd is the date of the next community workshop. Location TBD. We'll be sending mailers and flyers, emails, all that fun stuff. But that is going to be on housing. So we expect we'll have a good turnout. We'll review the data. We'll talk about some survey results and get some community input on housing in Freeport. So again, we'll send additional information, but know it's a busy time of year, so want to get that on people's calendars for Monday, September 23rd. Next week, we're going to be doing some updates to the Future Freeport website, so we encourage you to visit that if you haven't been on there in a while. If you want to stay up to date on the comp plan process, you can sign up for the email list there. And then finally, early next week, the draft inventory chapters with all the data of Freeport will be up there, and we will be starting outreach to stakeholder groups and boards and committees to review the data chapters and see if they have feedback on any of that content. So a lot of information just thrown at you. Let me know if you have any questions.
If there are questions on, there's a lot of feedback, I hear.
Yeah, there is a lot of feedback. Hopefully Tom hears us and comes in.
If there are questions on the new website and I'm not talking about changing it or anything, but if there are questions on things that are not exactly working as easily as they could, in my opinion, or someone else's, is there a place where we can send those comments?
Is this on the future Freeport Comprehensive Plan website that we just
No,
talked
the
about?
new
Or the
town website, like finding and having,
Sure.
document.
If you have comments on the new website, I think you could gladly send them to me in my new assistant manager role. If you are in a hurry for them, I'm going to be on vacation next week, so you can send them to Sophie. Otherwise, email them to me, and I'll work with our person that's doing some communications and IT, and we'll see if it's something that makes sense to address. We've been trying to flag and adjust things as we roll it out. So, yeah.
Thank you.
My way.
Just a little redundancy and the way it moves and things like that.
Yep, send it my way. And then number 4, which is not on here, I just want to give you an update on planning changes. So as you know, as of July 1, I have moved into assistant town manager role. We have Brett Richardson now working as the development director, and we are seeking a new town planner who will ultimately staff this board. We have done a first round of town planner interviews. We have a couple candidates that were interested in moving to an additional round, which we'll be scheduling for later this month. So hopefully by the next time we meet, you may have a town planner joining us for that meeting in the audience, or at least have an update. As a reminder, we are not meeting in August. We have that workshop with the planning board, but the next regularly scheduled meeting of the project review board will be the 3rd Wednesday in September, unless you decide to set a site walk tonight, in which case you might have that. But regular meeting, August, enjoy the 3rd Wednesday off. That's all I have.
Thanks, Caroline. Do we have all the professionals here for the first agenda item?
Where is Ted? Did Ted leave?
He's gone. Okay, so.
Don't see Jeff. Yeah.
Okay, so just a summary of the meeting agenda for tonight. We have 4 agenda items. Cedar Haven was first, and we're going to push that back until everyone's here. Down East Woodworks is a site plan amendment on an after-the-fact change of use. 182 Main Street, design review certificate for a new house construction on Main Street. Number 0 Shore Drive for a shoreline zoning permit has been tabled. And finally, Freeport Sewer District for a site plan amendment at South Freeport Road. The first item is Down East Woodworks for a site plan amendment. Is the applicant here? Can you give us a rundown?
I don't see Max Jennings here, but I can give you a rundown if you want. I mean, you could table it, but really, let me give you a little rundown that you can decide what to do. So this applicant came to the board in either 2020 or 2021 and got approval for an after-the-fact change of use. They had gone into a building that used to be a school. They're manufacturing and processing. They didn't realize that they needed a change of use before the board. So they're here before you for the after-the-fact change of use. They were also going to do a building addition. So they came and got approval, but then they never got permits and started the project. And it's been 3 years, so the approval lapsed, so we have no renewal period. So they have to be treated as a new application. Oh, and I just got an email that Max is here on Zoom. So they are back before you tonight. They do have one change to the plans that is not reflected in the staff report because the detail came in after it went out. They actually have shrunk the square footage of the building. Max Jennings is here, he can confirm it. I think it was 30 by 50, and they shrunk it down for code purposes to 30 by 44. Overall layout won't change, site features and drainage, all that. The project was previously, like I said, reviewed and approved by the board. The same conditions are here. The town engineer at the time had reviewed and approved it, and we haven't had any changes impacting the project itself or the stormwater management and erosion control. So we have no issues with it. Max Jennings is online if you have questions, and I think it would be good just to confirm that square footage too while he's on.
Any members of the board have questions for the applicant? Max, what is, What is the code provision that you had to get around to make the building 6 feet shorter?
Turn your microphone on.
I believe so. Let me try one more time.
It's good.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Great, thank you. There's a requirement for if we were to build a main floor that is greater than 2,500 square feet, it would require us with the fire marshal to sprinkle the building, which would be cost prohibitive for us to do our addition and continue our work. More than double the cost of the project. So we opted to shrink and stay within the 2,500 square foot for our main production area. The way that we're able to also kind of work around that is that we have solid, not brick, but cinder block breaks in the building that divide the building up into 3 different sections. So they're firewalls that are, I'm not entirely sure of the specifications, but allow us to kind of treat the building as separate units with that.
Thanks. Anyone from the board have any other questions? This is not a public hearing, but we always, nearly always invite public comment. Anyone from the public have any questions or comments about this? Okay. Is there a motion?
Sure. I will make a motion. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact, change of use and site plan amendment for Down East Woodworks at 95 US Route 1, tax assessor map 25, lot 7-1, to be built substantially as proposed. Application dated June 24, 2024, finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport zoning ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and their representatives at Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. 2, prior to any work on the building, the applicant obtain a building permit from the Freeport Codes Enforcement Officer. 3, in accordance with section 514.b.10 of the Freeport zoning ordinance, all parking stalls will need to be striped and signed as required. And number 4, prior to any site work, the applicant establish an engineering review and inspection account in the amount of $600 to cover the cost of plan review and site inspections by the town engineer.
I'll second it.
All in favor? No opposed, no abstentions. That was unanimous, Sharon. Thank you. Everyone's here for Cedar Haven now?
Yeah. Jeff is there. Okay, do you want an introduction on this?
Please.
So Cedar Haven came to you for a concept. We did a site walk. They submitted last month, but had to just wrap up a few engineering things. So Jeff is here tonight and can go over the changes. They did include renderings of the bathhouse building in the submission. They did kind of note, I can't remember the right word, but that it was preliminary. So one of the questions I have is to get a little clarification on that. And if they think they might make adjustments, is that something the board would be willing to add a condition for staff approval? The second thing is the lighting. They did submit cut sheets showing it's going to be full cutoff lighting. They didn't submit the photometrics plan to show whether or not it meets the levels at the property line. I think it's information we need to see to confirm, given the use and nature of the site. They have asked if that's something that we could add as a condition to review at the staff level. You did have a couple comments from the peer reviewing engineer on this. He felt like they should submit some soil information to be reviewed, septic, which they would have to do anyways, and some information on water quality. So we have put a proposed condition here that they comply with the standards of that. We have a preliminary cost estimate, but I haven't had a chance to have the peer reviewing engineer finalize the number yet. So performance guarantee and stuff like that is TBD. Otherwise, I think the only thing that kind of came up at the last meeting that was a little bit vague in the submission was buffering. They show buffering, but they were hoping that they can work that out with the neighbors, subject to staff approval. So I think that's something that would be good to get a little bit of guidance on. You have draft findings in a motion tonight. Again, the appearance of the Bass House, the photometrics, and buffering are a few questions I have. The only other thing I will note is they did show a solar tracker location towards the rear of the property before. They have moved that towards the front of the property because it's going to be a commercial use that requires a site plan amendment. So they incorporated that into this. They had gone to change the ordinance on this a while back. And then I think otherwise, everything else will be resolved. They do show that they will merge two of the lots into one. They are going to keep one of the existing dwellings that's on the site. There were two, there's going to be one left. They are not allowed to rent that as part of the campground. They will be having the camp manager live there on site. So I just want to make that noted because our ordinance is very specific that you can't rent dwelling units as part of a campground. Otherwise, there's no outstanding items.
Thanks, Caroline. For the benefit of the public, this is a project that has appeared before us once already. We've had a site walk out at the site and the public was invited to that as well. And it's the expansion of a campground which currently has 70-plus campsites on it, and the proposal is to add 20 campsites and a new road access 592 feet long. And you folks are here seeking final approval tonight.
We are. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'll plug in. Am I still? Yep, I'm still on. Okay. Yes. So that's correct. The Cedar Haven Family Campground. Again, for the benefit of those here who haven't been at the previous meetings, been offering camping and recreation facilities for the last 50 or so years. There are 77 camping options on the property right now, and we're proposing 22 additional. As Caroline had mentioned, we've kind of gone through the process. The proposed development will be phased, outlined in the plan sets. But in essence, what we're looking at doing is we've acquired 2 lots adjacent to the existing campground. We're looking to expand the existing campground into that area. The development will include gravel access drive, bathhouse, pavilion, water, sewer, underground electric, and it will be constructed in phases. The intent is to construct the initial 22 campground sites, all the road, all the utility improvements as part of phase 1. Because of the constraints of the site, I apologize here as I flip through. Because of some of the constraints of the site, you can see the area that we're expanding, if you can see my mouse, is kind of up in this area here. This long skinny portion is narrow, and there's a setback requirement for 50 feet for campsites. Those initially, the sites in that area will be tent sites and then converted over to camper sites with phase 2. Phase 2 development will include construction of a bathhouse here. We're proposing long-term potential open-air pavilion over the area of the septic system here. And then ultimately with phase 2, that'll be combined with the existing campground for lots. We've been through the town process, had a couple rounds of staff review. I believe we've addressed most of the comments. As Caroline mentioned, one of the items of concern that came up late was landscaping and buffering. What we did was updated the plan set. It's a little bit difficult to see on this, but there's an area here along this side. And then there's a second area along this from the edge of the right-of-way all the way up this side to where this wetland is. We've identified those areas where as areas where we're going to meet with the abutting property owners. I think that this area here along the front, there's some existing vegetation there. There were photos included in the last comment response. I can bring those up if you like. But if additional plantings are required or requested, then we'll coordinate that with the abutting owner across the street. The other piece over on this side, most of that has been cleared to the property line, so any additional plantings there will be coordinated with the property owner on that side as well. It's a pretty quick run through the project. I know that everybody on the board here has seen it before and they're familiar with it. I'd be happy to take any questions.
I'll ask a quick one, just.
Sure.
When you refer to the property owner, is this the gentleman who attended the site walk, who had the workshop right up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's the only one property owner you're dealing with?
That's the only one directly abutting the property, but yes, he's the one. And on the side here, he's got a kind of a new barn garage where he does automobile restoration and that sort of thing. His house is actually beyond that, and there's some concern. There's a back bedroom that might be able to see headlights from the site. So that was something that that Ted was going to reach out and take care of if he wants, you know, something like thick and tall like an arborvitae or something thinner, but we can coordinate plantings in that area.
Because it isn't resolved, we'd have to make it, either have you come back or make it subject to staff review after you approve it. That's okay.
What our plan was that it would be something that we could review with staff after the fact, and if we came in and with both parties, you know, agreeing to the planting plan, it should be a fairly straightforward
Great.
review, I would hope. But that was our hope and our intent.
Sorry to go first. Anyone got any questions for the?
Sure, I've got a quick question. And thanks for all the thorough information. I just wanted, the campground zoning specifically requires each area be 5,000 square feet. You note that the average is over 5,000 square feet. Does that mean every site is over 5,000 feet?
So most of these sites are over 5,000 square feet. When we say, because this is an expansion of the existing, when we were going through and actually designing how many sites we could put on this property, there were a couple of factors that came into it, and one was this, in effect, it's like a density calculation almost. And what we did was we took the overall parcel, the existing, the new, the overall area, how many campsites would that generate for the overall, and we came up with a number for this site. So we went through
So
that.
are there sites that are less than 5,000 feet?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I think there probably are a couple, but those might be designated for tent sites.
So I guess we just have to agree to accept that then?
Can I follow up on that question? Sure. Did that, how did you account for the road, like the existing roadways and the planned roadways in that?
So those areas were deducted from the overall area. So you do it almost like a density calculation like you would for a subdivision. So you take the overall parcel, you deduct areas that can't be used for campsites and that sort of thing. You deduct roads, you deduct natural resources and that sort of thing, and you wind up with a net area, and you divide that by the 5,000 to get the overall number of sites for the property.
Caroline, is that how the ordinance reads, that it's each, or is it an average?
It's something that they did go through with the code officer because the existing site is somewhat non-conforming. Let me pull up the section.
I've got it up, Caroline. It
I
says-
remember we went through this a couple months ago. Can you read it into
It
the
says,
record?
each recreational vehicle, tent, or shelter site shall contain a minimum of 5,000 square feet, not including roads and driveways, wetlands, and land below the normal high water line.
Yeah, I remember you went through this with the code officer, and where did he land, because these aren't roads, and I don't know that they were considered driveways. Do you remember how those worked into your calculation?
I believe we did deduct those from
Okay.
the overall number.
So So you do feel like you don't have 5,000 per site on some of these?
I think most are probably larger than 5,000. I'd have to go back and actually do a calculation to see if we had, on individual lots.
I think if sorry, it's been a while since we talked about this.
Exactly, yeah.
I think if there's concern and we want confirmation, I think we should have them either table and come back. I know they did put work into this with the code officer. I think having them submit it, the calculation for confirmation, before they do any site work or pull permits, would just be wise for a double check. And if they have an issue, then they would need to come back to the board.
Is this something that they could ask a waiver for?
I don't think they could really waive this because it's a dimensional standard, would be the way I would look at it.
I'll tell you, I have concerns about it because the other sections of the ordinance that relate to density speak to density differently. Like they don't use that each shall kind of language. And has there been a legal opinion that's submitted on behalf of the applicant?
No, the board didn't ask for a legal opinion
Right.
early on in concept, so we didn't get a legal opinion. They did work with the code officer because he listened to the meeting and had discussion, but no, we didn't get a legal opinion on it.
But there was nothing that was preemptively submitted as part of the application.
No, not that I can recall I remember talking about it and I remember them going through, but I don't remember us getting into like calculations like we do with a subdivision. Yeah.
It appears to me that we need to stick to the ordinance and the requirements. The word shall is the word shall. And, to give them an approval before we know that that's correct or not, I would be a little hesitant at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad to raise it. My only concern is we talked about it so long ago and we didn't require them to submit it, and I know they went through it. So that's why I think having them submit it is okay, but I feel like to now require some of these things you can, it's
Not
just
requiring
kind of
it
the
now, it's in the
process.
ordinance that should have been,
Yeah, but if we had concerns, we like to bring them up early, and if we wanted them to submit it, we should have raised it early on, is my only point. I mean, the standard is still the standard. They still have to demonstrate that they meet it.
Right, so you suggest we approve it subject to them establishing that to your satisfaction?
Yeah, I think we should just have them, I know they've been through it, so I think we have them submit it. If there's an issue and that they don't meet it, they would need to return to the board for changes to the plan. But I would definitely say if you were going to go down that road, you work it into the conditions so that they do it before they do any site work. So like they can't do anything until they get that resolved. Or if you're not comfortable and you don't have the information, you could table it. That would table them till September at this point.
Do the existing campsites comply with this, or were they done in another era when 5,000 was not the drop-dead number?
I'm going to refer to the applicant for this. It might be grandfathered, I think.
Yeah, most of those were grandfathered. I mean, the way that, again, and when we were working through this with town staff, the campground's 50 years old. And a lot of the current standards can't be retroactively, applied to the previous development, which is why we were trying to be so careful moving forward with these. And I apologize if I'm causing confusion here. I just don't know off the top of my head that each one, the area of each of these lots, and I don't want to misspeak. But I can tell you that we worked closely with town staff and followed their recommendations in developing this plan. And we'd be happy to provide whatever notes, calculations that we had done to staff for review before we move on to any sort of
Could you
construction.
provide it, and all in favor of trying to find a way to not say yes, but could you provide it so lots are numbered, this lot is X square feet, so we can, because the code is so specific in terms
Sure.
of each lot will.
We can provide a sketch to staff with an area number on each lot.
My concern is that I thought that was something that we specifically requested already.
We asked the question.
We asked, I think that was during the sidewalk, whether, when the plan gets updated, if it can be updated in a manner that identifies the square footage for each site, so we can address this issue when you come before us, and we don't have that.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't have that in my notes from the walk.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
Yeah,
I think
recall asking the
that's
question
back
about
to
it.
January. Yeah, I remember talking about it, and I remember them having conversations with the code officer. I remember because they looked at the road, and if it's a road, or if it's a driveway, or if it's just like this other, and then I remember there was conversation about the existing and the proposed, and how they were calculating it based upon the lots.
Yeah,
But I don't remember the verdict, but I do think it's important. If you're gonna go down the road of condition, I like Fred's idea, being very specific that we get something that shows that, because I'm going through the original submission and I don't see it included in there.
On my notes, I have something written about this size per the land area, so we must have talked about it at the time.
Yeah, you definitely talked about it at the first meeting, which I know is why they followed up on
And
it.
that was January?
January meeting, yeah.
Right. The meeting we had here for the sketch review, yeah. Yeah, and that's what triggered our conversation, starting to work with staff.
And I believe, didn't you originally come in with like 40-something sites?
It was
and then you
more.
shrunk it way down?
Yeah. It was more, and we pared that down, in part just because of, again, some of the physical constraints at the site and trying to get these areas in with access roads and make them serviceable and usable for either campers or RVs. So there's less here than what the calculation showed.
Should a site or two not meet this requirement, is there wiggle room, is there land where you
Probably,
could
yeah.
adjust it?
I
I
think
would be in
so.
favor of your trying to come back with all of them at 5,000 feet. or more.
Code says.
And again, I'm not 100% sure that they're not. I just
Right.
don't know that they are. If it turns out that they are, again, is this something that we should work through with staff, or is this going to require a plan back to the board?
I was just picking through some of these plans here, and the site that's next to the dumpster is 2,500 square feet.
Is, pardon?
2,500 square feet. And there are others that are 3,500, 4,200. There's one that's 8,700 that has the pavilion on it, or the bathhouse. It's some of the lines are even hard to, like read in that sense. because
Right.
They seem to serve multiple purposes. So I guess you get your averages by having some of these very large sites that are also accommodating other uses.
Right. And again, I mean, plan was put together based on guidance from staff, so.
Let me see if this meets with the board's approval. If,
I've got a question first, though.
I was going to pick up on your
Yeah,
find.
but,
I'll go for it.
But I'll let you make that reference. But my question is, there's been a reference to grandfathering, okay? And it seems as if sometimes when people are trying to get a permit, some stuff is grandfathered, some stuff can't be grandfathered. If you're going to do work in your house, my understanding is that sometimes generally speaking, is that maybe the electrical system can't be grandfathered if you're going to be, doing a renovation, okay?
Yep.
So my question with regards to this is, you mentioned grandfathering. You're opening up the whole site. We are permitting the site. We're not permitting just this section. Is that correct?
No, so I believe,
So how does that work?
when they calculated it, there was a non-conforming situation on the remaining portion. So they are bringing in this piece of land, these two parcels that they're putting in. They meet setbacks from all these things because they're going to keep their property line. So we're looking at this lot in the calculation.
Okay.
They're not changing the other campsites or adding campsites on that other parcel,
But it is,
changing that acreage.
Weren't we told this is just for this new application, what we looked at, and we were not told to?
Yeah, we're looking,
Look at
yes, we
anything
did the
else
site
there?
walk for the new parcel reflected here where they have the new campsites and the road expansion.
So I'm not sure what would be grandfathered in this
The
one.
density on so it's two separate parcels, but they're the density on the other side, I believe, is grandfathered, which Todd's getting at, which is why they're kind of leaving that alone.
Right, so we don't have to look at that. There's not a distinction here between some of this is grandfathered and some not, because the part that's not, we're not considering.
Right, you're looking at the part that some of it got started and stopped, and they came to you for
But
approval.
is it one big parcel?
No,
It is two
it
separate?
will be two parcels. It's actually multiple parcels.
Okay.
This
Okay.
backwards L, I'll call
Got
it,
it.
is multiple
I kinda
parcels.
remember that
right
now.
now with the residential and commercial. So
Okay.
that internal of this parcel will go away, the external around this will stay, and they have to meet setbacks, which you can see the setback line on there. If that makes sense.
So they came to us with a request for additional units they wanted to expand the campground. And that's what we
Yep, and then they worked with
are
the code
addressing,
officer.
not what was there before.
Right, they worked with the code officer, calculated the density, and further reduced the units on the site.
You done? Let me run this by the board and see if this satisfies people's concerns. If we can get these folks out of here without a 2-month delay, because we're not meeting next month, I think it'd be good for us to do that. They either comply with the ordinance at 5,000 feet or they don't, and this goes back 7 months now, and it's involved grandfathering issues and code enforcement officer and Caroline. So I think if we could put a condition in that says they need to comply and they need to establish it to Caroline's satisfaction, it brings them back here if they don't. And
Comply at the site-by-site level.
Yep. With the ordinance. And Todd has pulled up the January 17 minutes, which indicate that Mr. Madeira asked this exact question, and we were told it was going to be resolved. But that was in January, and we just don't know if it was resolved or not. So I'd suggest, if everything else is in order, that we consider posing that as a condition.
But it's not resolved. I mean, if I don't think they did their due diligence then, coming back to us with not adjusting these sites if it was mentioned in January.
So,
Do you know what happened after in January?
so the discussion in January had more to do with the number of sites than it did with the size of the sites. And the concern there was how many is too many. So at that point, we went back and we worked with the code officer and determined that this site will support, 30 sites based on the calculation. And we have less than that now, again, for a number of different reasons. But that was our understanding of what the concern was at the time. So that's the direction that we headed, and those are the items that we resolved with staff, or how many sites are there.
And you met with code enforcement officer after that meeting?
Yeah. Yes, after, not the same night, obviously.
After the January meeting?
But after the meeting, yes.
I mean, I think if they break it down, to show 5,000 per site, if they can't show that they meet that, then they're just going to have to strike a site and leave it grass. They've been through it. We know that they are close, so various things that you guys have put on as conditions, I think it can be resolved, but ultimately it's up to the board. If you're not comfortable taking action, then you table it. You don't have an August meeting. I hear some concern that we're then putting them up. We didn't specifically flat out say we want to see your math on this. I get there's some concern because.
I beg to differ. I mean, I think my
So-
question in January came specifically from me being relatively new, reading the code and saying, oh, this is one we need to check the box on. So I do think the question was very directed in terms of, is each lot 5,000 square feet? But I also want to find a way to get to yes rather
Sure.
than delay, so. Yeah.
You could table it, or you could, at some point, have an August meeting.
I would be leaning towards Ford's suggestion that we do this with the condition that they are compliant with the 5,000 square foot minimum campsite, as defined in the
And I
the
think,
ordinance.
yeah, that they clearly demonstrate.
They clearly
per camp.
demonstrate
Fred had good
to
wording.
staff, yeah.
That was a long time ago.
It was like 5 minutes ago.
I wrote it.
Oh, good. And in that scenario, Todd, what if 5 of the sites don't meet, do they still go forward except for those 5 sites?
This,
I don't know about
this
that.
approach basically means that they could come back to raise an amended plan that that rearranges them, or they can work with that plan, but those sites can't be, they're not sites.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if
I think you're right, yeah.
applicants don't usually come to me and be like, hey, I want to grass this over, but if they did, they can't meet it and they wanted to grass it over, I would say, okay, like I wouldn't make them come back to the board. But if, like Jim said, if they were like, all right, well, now we're going to start adjusting sites and different things, then they would need to come back to you. And maybe you could tie that into the carefully worded motion.
That Ford has.
That forecast.
But if Jim was correct in some of your estimates, these are not just close. Some of these are very far off. I'm hesitant to approve this, I'll just let you know that.
Okay, got it. But you
So-
folks understand, if we did have board consensus on this.
Yeah.
And you don't have it, you don't have approval, you've got to.
Right. So, and again, I have no doubt that the number of sites is allowed. If the size of the sites is an issue, and like you had said, we have two 2,500 square foot sites next to each other, then, I mean, my preference would be to combine the two sites into, instead of having two smaller ones, one that meets the requirement. And I guess, you know, I'll go back and I'll take a look at this and I'll see if that's the case, and if it is, the striking the line between the two and combining them as a single site, is that something that would come back? And I'm just trying to figure out my path forward here.
I don't think
Is that
it's-
something that is a staff review or something that comes back to the board?
Are you pressed for time?
Kinda, yeah. I mean,
I'm comfortable
Been at it for a
if,
while.
if they came back and could illustrate, okay, we've reduced it from 22 to whatever to meet that, and you see it, and I'm comfortable with staff approval. But
I mean,
I'm just one vote.
If they're going to modify for staff approval, like I said, going from like gravel or a pad to grass is not an issue. If they're going to start making other adjustments that involve impervious areas, pavement pads, they're going to have to come under the staff approval thresholds or come back to the board.
Is there a certain number of sites below which you can do via staff approval?
Again, our staff approvals, I mean, campgrounds are kind of unique. We have a couple, but it's really made upon square footage. I mean, if they're not changing the overall boundaries and putting two into one, I'm not overly concerned. I think if anything, they would actually have a reduction in impervious.
I see, you know, the January minutes made reference to the number of sites was above the threshold for staff review, so therefore it's being presented to us. So if there was a threshold, I'd say that might be a solution, that if there's just a couple that are being kind of reconfigured, that can go staff review. But if that's not an avenue, then.
I believe the town planner can approve up to 1,000 square foot modification over a 3-year period. I don't know, how big is each of the pads there?
they're around 780.
Yes, I mean, they would really only be able to tweak one of them. I mean, so if you put it as a condition and they can't meet it, they could come back in September, and if they demonstrate they can meet it, then they could move forward, or you could table it to September or schedule an interim meeting, but I guess it'd be good to move some discussion.
But we are
forward.
approving a site plan. Okay,
Conditionally, yeah.
we would be approving a site plan, and we would be approving it conditionally, and the question is whether they meet the 5,000 or not, and if they combine two sites into one, that is a different site plan than what we approved. It's not just based off the numbers. If you Xed off those two sites that were non-compliant that you're going to combine,
Yep.
then that would be fine. But if you're merging two sites together, that is a different site plan.
Okay, so I guess I follow you to the point, and I guess,
So I'm kind of,
so the change being, if we just don't use those two lots, and we have the same plan, the same infrastructure, the same road network, the stormwater design.
Where's the entrance going to be for that other site?
Beg your pardon?
Where would the entrance be for that new site? How would it be laid out? We're approving a site plan.
Right, it would be one or the
So
other.
I guess-
Then they would have to come under the staff approval threshold if they started reconfiguring, just like anybody else.
Okay.
Like anybody else
Okay.
would. Like if
Okay.
I can understand, like if they keep the driveway and they keep the pad and then they just get rid of the other driveway and pad, like that's not concerning. But then they're like, hey, let's move the pad, let's move the driveway. They're going to have to stay under that 1,000 square feet, just like everybody else would, or just like they would have to do today for the other side, or they're going to have to come back because they're going to be over that staff approval.
Fred, what was your language that you had?
I think it's fairly straightforward. It was conditional on showing a detailed list, site by site, that it meets the 5,000 square feet.
I think we'd also need to go further with that in terms of the site plan, kind of what Caroline, you were just talking about.
Can I make a suggestion before we get even further? Can we move this discussion, table it to the end, later in the meeting, so that he can go with his computer, with his software, outside and calculate each of those?
I won't be able to access that here today. That file, that CAD file,
Yeah.
lives on the server.
Okay.
And I can't,
I was trying to give
it
you
doesn't live
an
in here.
easier way to get there.
yeah.
I mean, if we knew how many sites we're talking about, right now we're saying, oh, we're just going to merge one with another one, and that'll be the end of it, but it sounds like it may be a
If it's
number.
significant, it comes back, if it's significant, Caroline can't approve it, it comes back to us.
Yeah, it's going to come
I
back
mean,
to
if
you.
it's only, 100 square feet off, then that's not, in my mind, not such a big deal. But I find that it's, this is something that's in the ordinance when you do your work and you give all the answers to everything that's required. This is something that should have been done, and we're always being asked to approve or not approve everything, and all of a sudden you start giving compensation to something that we should have known in the first place.
Sure.
So that's,
Well, I mean, I can tell you from a design standpoint and as far as plans changing, we're going to keep the plan and the road layout and the utility layout and everything else the same because we've got too much into this at this point for a do-over.
I don't think anyone's
So-
talking about a do-over of the whole place. I think we need to know what we're talking about.
Right.
Could it be that we approve
Go to
this?
staff review or project review.
Could it be that we approve the site plan as is for all the sites that meet the 5,000 square foot requirement? So in other words, all the other aspects of the site plan, we're saying, well, presumably we're saying yes to, and we're approving the individual sites that are shown to meet the 5,000 square foot minimum.
You
Stop
need to
there.
put your microphone on.
You want me to say that again? So the suggestion would be, if we're in agreement that all other aspects of the site plan are good, so we're saying, yes, we approve the site plan with the condition that the only RV and tenting areas that are allowed to be built are those that meet or exceed the 5,000 square foot requirement.
That'd be okay.
And if it's in striking distance for staff approval, they can approve it, and if it isn't, it comes back, it's not approved, and it comes back to us.
That makes sense to me. I'm not sure we need that second part since that's already.
It's given.
SOP.
Let me just see if the following, is the board far enough along on this to consider my proposed wording for an amendment?
Do we need a public hearing on this issue?
Pardon?
Do we need a public hearing on this issue? Or are you
We'll
getting
ask
to
for
the
public
point
comment. I'm just trying to figure out where we are.
Okay.
On this particular issue, I'm suggesting, because I'm concerned that staff has weighed in on this over the past 7 months, so we don't know what it was, and you're not clear whether you're compliant or not, and if you aren't, you're coming back. I think Fred's amendment, I understood that to say that this would be approved with a couple of things that Caroline mentioned that are not in the staff report that I wrote down. And with respect to Fred's suggestion, prior to any site work or construction, Applicant shall establish to staff's satisfaction compliance with minimum lot size requirements for every site according to ordinance section, whatever this section is.
It's 505
I found some clarification on this.
A1.
505 what?
A1.
Okay, thanks. What'd you say, Caroline?
I found some clarification on this after talking with the sorry, I'm going back to January. We had discussions and the code officer read it that it didn't mean that each physical site needed to be 5,000 square feet. Rather, he looked at it more of a density calculation, taking the total land area, making required deductions, road, wetlands, and based upon the remaining land area, divide by 5,000 to see how many sites you could get. And actually, he did, this should be calculated on the total area of the campground and total number of sites, not just the new area was the guidance.
Do they have the right to change what's in an ordinance?
That was the interpretation of the code officer when he read
That's
it.
what I'm saying. I mean, an interpretation's just that. Is someone, the code officer, have the right to change the clear wording in an ordinance to fit to something that someone may want?
They are the interpreter of the ordinance.
I'm not sure that's a question we should get into here.
Eh.
Well, I
Someone
think the
doesn't
words are the
agree.
words. I mean, shall, in any legal
Linda,
statement.
I think the thing
I'm
is,
sorry.
whether you want to go with directly what the ordinance says, or whether you're comfortable not, okay? Rather than who should what, okay, on this one.
You're taking something out of context.
So-
I'm saying, in legal, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been on enough of these types of commissions. Legally, if the word in an ordinance has a shall or may, the shall is a directive. And that's what I'm saying. Does somebody have the ability to, decide that that shall is not a shall anymore? I'm not talking about the code officer, I'm not disparaging him or anything. I'm just saying, we're being asked to kind of give leeway to something that is a true directive in the ordinance.
So that's more of a legal question. It is the job of the code officer to interpret the ordinance. There is an appeal process if it's interpreted and somebody does not agree with the interpretation of the code officer. We don't have the code officer here right now to clarify. I think you have a solution to go forward. If the applicant does the calculation, there's sites that are not 5,000 square feet, we'll either get rid of them, or then we will seek step 2, interpretation, legal guidance on that section of the ordinance. I think that's probably your best plan forward, hearing the comments from the board instead of trying to
Yeah, just-
recreate memories from
just-
January of 2024.
Kind of going where Linda was going and with what Jim mentioned is that the ordinance is very specific. It says each site shall contain a minimum of 5,000 square feet. It's not an average, it's each site shall. So I would agree with your wording.
The wording of the proposed amendment?
That's-
Are there any other, are there any other comments or questions from the board?
I have no issues with anything else related to the site plan.
Okay.
All of it is good, just this one item.
It was your comment in January that started all this.
It's cold back home.
Is any questions or comments from any members of the public other than the applicant? Okay. Is the board ready for a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I guess you got a podium, yeah?
Give us your name and your address, if you will, sir.
My name's Scott Poulin, 55 Baker Road in Freeport. I'm the closest abutter who has the barn that restores cars, okay? And what I'd like to do is talk in favor tonight of this project because Ted is an amazing neighbor. He's mentioned doing buffering for people within that have concerns about lights or concerns about visibility of pieces. Ted and I have spoken, had a long conversation about that. He's more than willing to create a berm and do any kind of buffering that we've requested. If you've been out to that campground, you've seen market improvement to that. It's actually an asset to the community in that area and not a liability, as some might think. I think it's going to create a better traffic situation with the road that's in. And I'm fully in favor of the project, and I'm hoping that the board will move forward with it and approve it tonight.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board, or is the board ready for a proposed motion? I'll do one. I am going to, Sharon, Caroline's going to make me read the whole motion, but I'm going to add the following at the end. I'm going to read you my wording, then we'll go through the whole thing. Just for the benefit of the board. This would be condition number 5 of the proposed staff report. The following shall be established to the satisfaction of town planning staff. A, review and approval of final design plans for bathhouse and pavilion. B, details of buffering agreement with abutters. C, prior to any site work or construction, establish compliance with minimum lot size requirements of ordinance section 505A1 for every site. So here's my whole motion, if it's okay with the board.
Do we need to read these if we're all here?
We need to read them now.
I mean, I like when you read them because then the applicant can hear all the conditions, but everyone is here, so I think you can move in second
This is a long
as
one.
printed
Okay.
and amended. I
Right.
only have a little bit of a concern with your last motion because if the code officer interprets it differently, they could comply with that condition as written.
You've loosened up since you became assistant town manager.
I know, the assistant town manager. says
My
these are
motion
standards.
is as stated exactly in the staff report with the following condition 5. The following be established to satisfaction of town planning staff. A, review and approval of final design plans for the bathhouse and pavilion. B, details of buffering agreement with abutter. C, prior to any site work or construction, establish compliance with minimum lot size requirements of ordinance section 505A1 for every site. Is there a second? Any discussion?
I would propose a slight amendment to add the phrasing minimum 5,000 feet square footage lot sizing requirement for every site. In other words, to add the number in with that for clarity of what the specific.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Can we say 5,000 per the ordinance?
Yeah. That's pretty specific.
Sharon, C, subpart C is changed prior to any site work or construction establishment in compliance with minimum lot size requirements of ordinance section 505A1, 5,000 square feet minimum for every site.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Caroline, for going back and finding what I was remembering.
Partially.
A long time ago.
It does feel like a long time ago.
182 Main Street.
Okay, so 182 Main Street, we have the applicant online. What I have learned is US mail is very slow, but when the applicant is out of state in Hawaii, it's even slower. So I got these printed versions of the more detailed plans, which I emailed you the other day, but you have a printed copy in front of you. This is the same thing you received via email. They have a purchase and sale on this lot, so they had submitted preliminary drawings in a packet to get on the agenda and had continued to make further revisions. The shape of the building, the scale, the areas of openings is all accurate on the drawings. However, for details such as trim, mullion, door material, they have included extensive cut sheets in their submission. When I was reviewing this and drafting findings, I was looking at it incorrectly. So if you decide to take action on this tonight, we'll need to go through the findings, which I've already marked up and can walk you through on changes. But if you're looking at the applicant's submission, the top left would actually be the front. So the staff report says the 2 stories is going to be in the front. It's actually going to be the single story in the front the two-story in the rear, and then the three-bay garage with accessory dwelling unit will behind it. Up here, you're seeing you said this was the northerly facade, I think I'm getting it right?
That's north.
Southerly, and then the rear. The applicant is online, they can walk you through the proposal. There's one thing I do need to note for the board. So for any applicant to get on the agenda, they need to show you that they have right title or interest in the property. In this case, the applicant submitted a purchase and sale agreement to show they had it under contract. In the packet were some old legal opinions and a letter from a former code officer regarding whether or not this lot is buildable. That is not a question before the board. What is before the board tonight is an application for design review. The reason I mention this is we had similar interpretations in the past on other lots where you had two legally non-conforming lots in one deed, one had been built on, one had not. And so you have this past interpretation in the file. That interpretation has recently been challenged before the Board of Appeals on another lot, and they determined it was not buildable, and that has since been appealed to Superior Court. So although, well, it's beyond the purview of the board to dig into deeds and do legal work and interpretation, it's important for you to be aware that this is an issue that's out there, unresolved, and beyond the purview of the board. Because it's beyond your purview, it's very important that we're clear that you guys are reviewing this under design review standards in the design review criteria. There is a proposed condition added that by you taking action on this, you are not weighing in on this lot and whether or not it is buildable. The applicant is aware of this. He's talked to the code officer. He knows there's some pending litigation, but I just wanted to give you some background on why you have that condition. We have done the same thing upon legal guidance in past cases when there's been deed interpretations that are beyond the purview of the PRV, but just wanted to give you some background. So the applicant is online and they can walk you through the submission.
And just to give context to the members of the public who are here or watching this on TV, this is a design review approval. It's not a site plan approval where we're looking at parking adequacy and streetlights and so forth. This is a residence. It wouldn't normally come before us, but it's in one of the two design review districts we have in town where we have to make sure that the outside of the building is in rhythm and scale with the other buildings that are around it. So that's the limit of our review authority on this. Does the applicant want to make some comments?
Hi, guys. First off, just wanted to thank you all for your time. But just quick walkthrough on the project. We are under contract for this lot. Just trying to go through the process because of the pending legal decision on the non-conforming lot. But we're basically looking to build 1,500 square foot, two-story house with a detached ADU in the back. All the specs I have listed on there, but we're looking to do 4-inch lap siding, pine trim, black metal roofing if possible. All the doors and windows would be fiberglass. Our preference on color would be black, but if the board chooses to go a different route, we're open to other options. On the windows, we have the grids in between the glass. We're open to changing that as well if that's the preference. Everything else I have listed on there, but basically we've got approval for cutting the driveway towards the right of the lot, towards the end on the right. Should have access to public water and sewer. Hopefully we'd be starting on this either later this year or early next year, but this will be our full-time residence once the project would be completed.
Thank you. Questions from the board for the applicant? I have one. I looked at a cut sheet for the windows that I thought showed outside grills on the windows, and then Carolyn, I think you just confirmed, suggested that it's not. It's just flat glass with dividers between the panes. Is that right?
That's how I have it, yeah, but if We can very easily switch to the simulated divided lights. That would be no problem on our side.
Okay, you'd be willing to have that be a condition of any approval?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
I had one question I meant to ask. One thing in the materials list, they mentioned a brick walkway connecting to the existing sidewalk that wasn't shown on, or sorry, a paved walkway, that wasn't shown on the plan, so I thought we should get some clarification as to which entrance was connecting to the sidewalk there, because there's multiple entrances on the buildings.
That would be on that front section, the tall door next to the bank of windows under the porch. The walkway would lead right up to that.
Is that existing?
No, that would be new.
Yeah, it's vacant.
I just want to clarify, and I think you said it, and sensitive to design review, what the front facade looks like. So the front facade is the one-story, and facing Main Street would be an entry door on the right-hand corner, is that correct? I'm not sure, that's what I'm asking.
It's the end with the porch.
Yes, it might be actually a little bit easier to look. On sheet A6, you can see the west elevation facing US Route 1. It's probably like 10 pages into your plan set. You can see the east elevation, which is the rear, and then the north and south elevations. So actually, before I don't know, that's right.
I'm not fine.
No, they show, just to clarify, they show this as the south elevation here, and then this is the north elevation.
Doesn't make sense if that's
The west elevation
Caroline,
facing Main Street is great.
I do not. Rick, do you have your plan set that you could screen share with the
It's on
board
page
in the room?
66 of the digital file, is the A6 right there.
And it's the west elevation is what faces Main Street?
66?
Oh, there are only 52 on
Excuse me, that is on the 182 Web Street, Main Street for web file, the 67-page file. It's on the second to last page.
Rick, do you have the ability to screen share?
Yeah, I'm working on that right now.
Okay, let me, you should be able to screen share.
I just sent the request.
So we're working on, and so this was sent to you via email with the last minute changes?
So
Was the
we're trying to
edit-
figure out, get clarification on what is the street view, correct?
And that would be the west elevation, if I'm reading this correctly.
Correct. The west elevation right up here, that would be the street view towards the front.
The east would be facing the rear,
Yep.
and then the south has the kind of porch overhang. And the north has the chimney.
So I've got some concerns about the way this is oriented in the way that it's massed with the small part in the front facing Main Street with the semi-asymmetrical facade and the tall part in the back. I just don't think it's going to fit the scale criteria of the design review ordinance, nor the openings or fenestration placement and proportion in the way that it presents itself on the street. So if we're voting on it tonight, I would vote no on this right now.
Would you feel better if it were flipped?
I mean, I think that would help, and then if the fenestration were reworked and the porch were given something more, if there was something more centering to it and some more response to surrounding buildings and context, that would help. It would feel more logical to have the larger part, two-story part in the front, and then a L of sorts in the back before you get to the big garage in the background.
I would go along with that, and for the entryway, if you were to flip it, rather than having a lean-to roof on it, have a V roof that would follow the roof line above. And looking at street view, that seems to be sort of typical in that area in town.
Yeah, there's lots of
With
different
its
variations on
adjacencies.
porches and bays and
But I
paired and
haven't seen
combined
that. Just
windows and.
I'm not seeing that variation.
Yeah, there were
For a front yard.
There were some photos in the submission of abutting properties showing
Okay.
window configuration,
Okay.
multiple stories, peaked roofs.
Which one, for the web or the other one?
In the original, in there, in the original submission, they had a cover letter with some pictures.
It's page 5 of the web file.
Of the web file?
And for the applicant's benefit, I think what we're talking about is the design review requirement about the proportion of a building's front facade. The first impression the building gives is that of its front facade, the side of the building which faces the most frequently used public way. The relationship of the width to the height of the front facade should be visually compatible with that of its neighbors. So I think that's what you're getting at, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
And to that point, do we have, maybe I just overlooked it, do we have an image of the facade of the garage and accessory dwelling? That appears to also be visible from the street.
And there were two options, to have it perpendicular to Route 1 and/or parallel, correct? And it seems they have it perpendicular here.
Yeah, so I think if it's perpendicular, you will see some of the overhead doors, the way it's laid out on page 2 in the proposed site plan.
Oh, I see. It's perpendicular. You see the doors and the kind of the
That-
second floor deck section on the upper right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I may have missed, oh, he's gone. Color,
He's still on.
color of the siding again?
So the color of the siding is from the Benjamin Moore Historic Collection. I think we have it as HC 163. And I have,
Just to
I have
remind, we
colors on there. I'm just,
don't regulate color anymore in this district as well.
But since we.
You can ask, but we don't regulate color in this district.
He used other houses comparable in the neighborhood, and they all seem to basically be white with some, so I was just curious if he was,
Even window frames?
It's not a compatibility standard anymore. When, in the amendments, we struck references to color. I encourage you all to come to the design review workshop on August 8th.
Definitely.
So, other thoughts from the board?
The material of the chimney, I'm not sure I'm not looking at a detail, but it doesn't seem very in keeping traditional with the adjacency with the adjacent dwellings, which
real quick on that. I forgot to put that in there, but our plan would just be to use red brick on that. I don't know if that's the preference, but.
okay.
Are you okay with the red brick?
Yeah,
chimney?
definitely.
Okay. So we've heard from two of you. We have a room full of people tonight.
Any other thoughts in relation to Jason's comment?
I tend to agree with Jason's thoughts about the kind of that orientation.
I would as well.
Is there any way your architect could take what you're proposing is the front of the building, or if you flipped it, and could you put that on the site so we can see it in relation to the neighboring property, some sort of elevation that gives us a sense of how it fits in on that strip along Route 1? And I
Yeah,
mean,
I can work on that.
That would be helpful, just to get a sense of whether the scale is,
I just want to make sure that you understood the concern that's been voiced about the orientation of the building, having the low portion of the building at the street? Okay.
Yep, correct, that's fine, so.
I was unclear on Lynn's comments. So Lynn, are you still wanting to see that if he revisits the orientation and were to flip it, you still want to see the two-story scale in relation to all the other two-story buildings?
well, not necessarily all, but this doesn't give, it's not cited in this, all the comparables have trees and a driveway. You can see how it's cited. I can't tell from this how it's cited, no matter which way you put it. But that could be a shortcoming on my part, but an elevation would help.
It's not that, I mean, all that kind of design costs money. I mean, that kind of like adds more to the design plan.
I know, I understand, but,
Yeah, I mean, and I'm just trying to get clarification for the applicant. So I hear a majority of the board saying they're not comfortable with the orientation. I hear Todd saying he's okay with the chimney now that he hears brick. Preference would be for simulated decided lights for compatibility purposes. I mean, there's millions on the outside. Jason felt that they need to revisit the configuration of the openings, meaning windows and doors, or at least some of them, in regards to compatibility with nearby structures. Jason, the one thing I was unclear on was, could you clarify what you're looking at for needing clarification? I'm going to call them porches for lack of a better word and a little bit of unclarity here. What are you looking for there for additional detail?
I think the recessed porch doesn't work so well in context. There are all these like great porches on all the different houses down the street, and you've got many different styles. So I think there should be something more that composes the facade, and the porch would be part of that.
Okay.
I can't design it from here, so.
Yeah, and you cannot design it. Good job.
Jason, in that comment, are you're referring to the accessory structure?
No, the main structure.
Which?
The porch is kind of like notched out.
Oh, that
Kind of
front
in this-
porch area is what you're.
Right, which is
The
kind of.
area that I was hesitant to call porch. So you think this would look more compatible if it looked like more of a traditional porch?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right.
Do you feel the same way? What about comments on the accessory dwelling unit with the three-bay garage, knowing that if it's perpendicular, you would see some of the overhead doors and you would see some of the upstairs porch? Did you feel the same way?
No, I think the fact that that's set back obviously goes a long way, and when the garage doors are far back there. I think there's some drop to the land as well. And you kind of expect some differences in latitude and quirkiness, if you will, in the structures that are more set back. So I don't really have any issues with the way that's composed.
The other board members have additional, I just want to be really clear for the applicant, they do have a PNS. I'm sure there's a timeline attached to this. So if they make changes, I just want to be clear what the board feels they need for compatibility. And hearing some more on the back structure, whether it be similar to Jason or different, I think it would be good to give them some feedback.
To me, the general design of the building looks like it's very workable with. I'm not an architect, but the visual compatibility with the adjacent homes, the front entryway from Main Street, something that feels like it fits in that area would make me feel a lot more comfortable with the appearance.
Rick, do you
And
feel like
in
you have?
alignment with the code, too, by the way.
Okay, good.
And the other one too is from the pictures that were submitted, all the houses that I'm seeing have fairly generous overhangs of their eaves, the roof eaves. And I think that might also help make it fit in more. From the drawings, they look fairly short, fairly modern and contemporary, and to have a little bit more overhangs on the eaves, I think could help it fit in a little bit better.
I feel like on the, what I thought was the front, which is the rear, it looks like there is overhang there. Are you still?
I'm eyeballing from the elevations
Okay, I'm
to
looking at
photographs.
C1. Okay, so overhang.
Their photographs or some other ones?
The photographs of the adjacent.
Okay.
Okay.
Rick, do you feel like we've given you some guidance that you can act on before you come back to us?
Yeah, I mean, our concern is timing. This is relatively time sensitive, so we can work on getting all the changes. Is this something we have to do another meeting like this again, or can we do this before September in another setting?
So your next meeting would be the third Wednesday in September, unless you wanted to add an August meeting to the schedule. I will tell you that I am not able to be present on August 17th. And Linda, I know Linda is away, but, okay, so you could pick an alternate date if you wanted to.
And I would note that I think I'm prepared to vote yes on a configuration that shows the east elevation facing street side today. I mean, I appreciate that we don't have that necessarily in the plans, and others may disagree, but if that was something that the applicant could commit to, I would be prepared to act on that today.
To me, that looks like the backside as it's shown here, so I wouldn't be comfortable voting yes for it myself.
What'd you say, Jason?
It looks like it's composed as a backside, and it looks like that, so I can't just say turn it 180 degrees and it's all good.
View.
And Jason, just so we're talking about the references, the elevation references shown on page 66, or page the A6.
As far as a follow-up, I'd be willing to try to find time between now and then to make this happen. So I understand the desire not to delay.
I agree. It wouldn't be a very long meeting, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm not comfortable moving forward right now from what we see from our comments.
Right.
The other thing I'll add is, one of the things you have for another item tonight, a new application, is to talk about a site walk. So we could pick an alternate date in August if you wanted to meet and try to do a site walk and a meeting.
Do that before we finish the meeting. So if I understand the consensus of the board, we're not going to take any action tonight. Try to have a meeting, which is not presently scheduled, in August to take a look at your plans, if you can have them done by then, Rick. And what I'd urge you to do, does that sound okay with the board?
Yeah.
What I would urge you to do is take a close look at this ordinance. It's all about being within the rhythm of the buildings that are nearby, and take a close look at the buildings that are nearby.
So if he flipped it and made adjustments based upon the feedback, generally speaking, I hear we want some alterations to make the front look more like a traditional New England front as shown in the photos in the submission for other properties. Would you feel like he would be headed in a better direction?
Yes.
Yes, but I still would like to see what it looks like.
Oh, yeah, you need to see what it looks like. I feel like I can give him Brett and I can work with him and give him some good guidance. I think if you're not going to take action on it tonight, which sounds like you don't have the votes to probably affirmatively take action on it, somebody would just want a motion to table. I think if you're not ready to set a meeting date,
That's set it tonight.
now you could do it at the end of the meeting, and we could communicate that with the applicant.
Is there a motion to table?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion? It's unanimous. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Zero Shore Drive has been tabled to a later meeting. The last action item,
That was at the request of the applicant. I just want to note that for the record.
43 South Freeport Road, site plan amendment, which is proposing, among other things, a second means of access to the site and new construction of a 3,300 square foot building. And I will just because a lot of folks are here for this and you're not perhaps acquainted with our procedures, I'll give you a little bit of a description about how this process might go, and Caroline will fill in on anything I leave out. This is an informational meeting. It's the first presentation to us, although it sounds like you folks have been working on this or been acquainted with this for a matter of months. and as has town planning staff. This is the first presentation of the meeting to us. It requires our approval, it requires apparently other governmental approvals, so nothing's, this hell has to happen concurrently, and there might be a sequence to it. We will decide tonight whether we want to have a site walk, we'll decide tonight whether we want to have a formal public hearing, and as you may have gathered, we always invite public comment anyway. But with that said, can you give us an introduction to the project?
Sure. So this is just a conceptual presentation. Although the site is used for much more, it's the facility of the Freeport Sewer District. It's been there for many years. They are permitted for this operation through DEP. They most recently came in for a site plan amendment, maybe like 15 years or so ago. They have been working on these plans for a while, and there have been some different versions out there, which I think caused some confusion for the board when they were reviewing submission materials and got public comment are talking about things that this board hadn't seen before because they never got submitted to this board. It's not part of the plan before them. So what you have before you is an application for a new administrative office building and a second entrance to the site. Again, there were some other versions that showed a different entrance. The entrance before you would come off of South Freeport Road. The applicant can go into a little bit of detail how they'll use this second entrance, but how they presented it in the submission is that they're hoping to have a second form of egress to the sewer district site in case the main primary existing egress becomes obstructed. You did receive some public comment in advance of the meeting. Those of you that got paper packets also had a letter with a book attachment. Everyone else got it tonight. We didn't have it in a digital format. You did get a new letter that came in today that was in front of you, and a revised letter to something that was in your packet. We're getting a lot of questions. Again, you guys are reviewing this under section 602, which is site plan review. In your public comment, you have gotten some questions and comment on discharge, treatment of water. Those are not something there before you proposing changes to, and rather something that is regulated by DEP. So I think you'll get a lot of comments about different things. It's a public forum. People are welcome to comment if you decide to take comment, but you're here reviewing this under section 602 site plan review for the second driveway in the additional building. You do have a packed room. This isn't a public hearing, but you do take public comment. If you decide, sometimes you decide to limit that. If you are going to do that tonight, you need to do that before you start taking public comment.
So let's cross that bridge right now. To reiterate what Caroline said, if our review of this project is pretty narrow in scope. If folks have comments well outside of that scope, just in the interest of time, I anticipate that Caroline will call it to our attention.
That's your job.
With respect to public comment, so the way the rules work for public comment, it's the chair has the first shot at establishing the rules of procedure for public comment. If anyone on the board opposes my following recommendation, they can call it to a vote for a different approach, which would be fine. My suggestion is as follows, that we use the same time limits as the town council does. That's 3 minutes per person. Can only speak once, can't share your time with somebody else, and can't buy time, can't swap time. And that we would do that until we've heard from everybody tonight.
You need to vote on that.
I know, actually, we will, but I don't think we do. Is that approved? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, we kind of like us to vote on that.
Your rules of order say a majority vote of board members.
I thought it was only if they didn't like my idea. Okay, all in favor of limiting comment to 3 minutes? Okay, thank you very much. And our esteemed city manager is going to run the clock.
Could you add I don't think you have to add this, but just state it that they should, when they talk, they should be addressing the chair and not each other or not the board when they speak, and give their name and address.
When you come to the lectern, please give your name, your address, and you are not supposed to take your
take it up with any one member of the board, run it through me. But we'll all hear it.
Before you get into public comment, though, you're going to hear from the applicant.
We are. And we're going to have comments from the board before we have public comment.
Applicant's not limited to 3.
Nope, applicant can go and go and go.
Good evening. My name is Leonard Blanchard, the newly hired construction manager for the Freeport Sewer District Rehab and Upgrade Project. Joining me today is the new general manager, Sarah Randall, and several of our elected Board of Trustees. We are here before you tonight because the district is in the planning and design stage of a $20.1 million rehabilitation and upgrade to its treatment and pumping facilities. This project is a result of a proactive and strategic planning process that examined existing and future system needs to improve the long-term sustainability of the infrastructure to prepare for the anticipated growth of the town while ensuring that we continue to meet federal regulatory standards of the Clean Water Act. Given the comments received by the Project Review Board about our upgrade, I thought it would be helpful to provide some context to you before our engineers, Woodard and Curran, delve into the technical details of how our proposal fits the zoning requirements of the town. Currently, the Freeport Sewer District serves over 1,000 residential, commercial, and public customers, and to do so, we operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the year. We've existed at our current location on the corner of South Freeport Road and Cushing Briggs Road for half a century. The serviceable lifespan of a wastewater treatment plant is typically some 25 to 30 years before it needs substantial upgrades. Many other towns in the same boat in terms of needing to address aging wastewater infrastructure. You may have seen some recent news articles about what is happening in these towns. Thankfully, beginning years ago in Freeport, our Sewer District Board of Trustees and staff undertook a future planning process and issued a RFP in early 2021 for an evaluation of our wastewater treatment system. Woodard and Curran, one of the most highly regarded engineering firms in Maine, was contracted for the study. The evaluation became the basis of our planned upgrades. Because of this foresight, the town of Freeport is now poised to have a wastewater treatment facility that will serve their needs for the next generation, avoiding some of the problems that are now plaguing other towns. And to minimize impacts to our ratepayers, the Freeport Sewer District sought outside funding for the project. We are very pleased that the USDA Rural Development awarded Freeport Sewer District over $20 million in the form of a $7.5 million grant and a $12.6 million low-interest rate loan for the project. This was quite an achievement, and if we had waited any longer, Freeport would no longer be eligible for the funding due to the rise in the median household incomes of our residents, what's known as the MHI. We are here before you tonight to present Phase 1 of the planned 3 phases of upgrades for your consideration of how it meets Freeport's zoning requirements. This phase addresses the critical need to construct a new building at the wastewater treatment plant property. This clapboard-sided, shingled-roof, one-story, 3,300 square foot building will house administrative offices and a laboratory. The administrative lab building is a public building defined by state and federal standards, and the public needs access to it independent of the fenced security perimeter required for the treatment operations, which is not a public access facility. In addition to providing public access, the driveway will provide an alternate access during emergency response situations should, as has happened, our main entrance is blocked during weather emergencies. This is prudent planning as a public utility operating 24/7 that must respond as emergency response providers as defined by the federal government. This role is expected by the town and ratepayers and is also a responsibility we are required to carry out as a function of our mission for the inhabitants of the town of Freeport. The existing control building that currently houses the administrative staff and its functions was not designed to meet that need. In fact, the room used for office space was originally the chlorine storage and dispensing room. Solids dewatering also takes place in that building. That is an odorous process that permeates the entire building and is not healthy for staff. In summary, the control building is a treatment process facility, not meant to house staff on a permanent basis. The building is also used for public meetings of its Board of Trustees and does not meet ADA requirements. Our new office building will also include a lab that is properly sized and equipped to process current and anticipated tests required by regulatory agencies that are used to measure and monitor the effectiveness of our water treatment process. Once the admin office lab is constructed, the control building will be converted back to process and maintenance equipment storage. Building a new administrative lab is the first phase of the upgrade due to concerns about employee health and safety and the need to minimize employee exposure to the treatment process. Our goal is to have it ready for staff by next spring. Our Board of Trustees would appreciate having the new office lab building ready and available for staff as soon as it is possible. As you may be aware, we suffered the loss of longtime general manager and Freeport native Lee Linares in November. Upon his death, the Board of Trustees has worked tirelessly to keep the project timeline on track and the funding intact so the town did not lose this tremendous opportunity for the much-needed upgrades. During this time, FSD became aware of concerns about our plans from the residents abutting our property. We met with representatives of the neighborhood to learn more about the concerns and came to a compromise solution to move the admin lab building further inward from Cushing Briggs Road and to locate the building's driveway onto South Freeport Road. We held a public informational meeting at the community center where some 50 citizens learned more about the plans and asked questions of our staff and engineers. Despite the added cost of building the longer driveway, the Freeport Sewer District Board of Trustees changed the plans to accommodate the neighbors' wishes in the spirit of neighborliness. Representatives from the group have submitted a letter to you verifying this compromise and voicing their approval of that revision. We understand that there are some concerns regarding our upgrade project. Let us address some concerns of which we are aware. Some comments say our upgrades are not critical. That is true. The Freeport Sewer District is not in crisis mode. Thank goodness you have a public utility that plans ahead to avert being in a crisis management situation. To develop this project, we have worked with federal and state partners, and the project has undergone a lengthy assessment and study period involving partnerships and approvals from numerous state and federal partners, with approval from this local authority being one of the last approvals needed. Screening our facilities from view of neighboring abutters. We have included screening in the form of tree planting in our application, and there will also be trees remaining on our land that will also screen the driveway. Some abutters are still not satisfied with the compromise and do not wish for any secondary driveway at all to serve the new administrative lab office building. While not all wastewater treatment facilities in Maine are fortunate to have the space for secondary access, this does not mean it is not appropriate addition for a wastewater treatment plant planning for the future, which includes more intense storm events. Other first responders in town, the police and fire departments, for example, have 3 points of access. This building, Town Hall, has 3 points of access. As you know, planning and design is an emergent process, and as new information has been ascertained, we have incorporated it into our plans. And as a public utility responsible for operating 24/7 as emergency responders, these plans represent what we have determined we need to operate and maintain critical infrastructure and meet our mission. We are always looking for improvements and incorporating them as they come up through site investigations, a continuing assessment of infrastructure, and permit limits we expect from our regulators. We know we are in a residential neighborhood and have made and amended our plans in a respectful way while also accounting for the primary needs as a utility provider. Respectfully, while some who purchase houses next to the treatment plant may not wish to be reminded of our presence, the Freeport Sewer District is proud of our important role in cleaning the town's wastewater and in the improvements we have made in treating wastewater in meeting and exceeding state and federal water quality standards. We are proud that we proactively planned and secured this funding to make these upgrades possible. This investment will help Freeport meet even higher water quality and safety standards, support future economic development, and better ensure the well-being of Freeport residents for years to come. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to address the board. And with that, I will hand it over to our engineer, Megan McDivitt of Woodard and Kern.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for letting us present to you tonight. I'm going to go just through a brief presentation and then we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. So I'm going to start tonight by just kind of reviewing existing conditions, really talk about project location, the existing site plan, and some of the constraints we have on the site with these upgrades and improvements we're looking at. And then I'll talk about this proposed project that we have in front of you. We'll review the site plan, have some preliminary elevations and renderings, and then we'll talk about a couple of the main components, such as the driveway, stormwater, site utilities, and lighting. So I believe most of the people in this room know the location we're talking about, but in case anyone doesn't, the wastewater district, the Freeport Sewer District, is located on 43 South Freeport Road. It's in the Village 2 district. As you can see, it shares frontage with both South Freeport Road and Cushing Briggs Road, and it even has a connection to the shoreline of the Harris-Seacot. This here, and I apologize, it's maybe a little difficult to see with all the white there, but this is a survey of the existing site. You might be able to make the little laser work here and kind of point out some main things. But here is your current access to the site, the current driveway that comes off South Freeport Road. This is the control building right here in the center that Leonard spoke to. There are 3 main treatment units in the rear, where all the magic happens, where we treat the wastewater. There's also a headworks building and a couple of chlorine contact tanks that also provide to the treatment of the facility. The whole facility has secured fencing around it, and it also has a vegetated perimeter around the whole side. What you don't see in these site plans, and what is not always obvious when you walk a site, is what are some of the constraints. A few items that are constraining and limiting constructability on the site are the below grade infrastructure. So for example, this red line here is the main influent line. This is where all the raw wastewater that's collected from that 1,000 plus residents comes into the site, comes from 2 locations, and it goes into the headworks building, which is the beginning of the treatment process. We also then have, at the end of the chlorine contact tank, this is the fully treated effluent that then comes out and discharges to the Harris-Seacot. In addition, In this wooded area here that's kind of tucked in beneath the access road is an area that was delineated by FB Environmental as a wetlands. So that is an area of natural resource and is protected under the Maine DEP Natural Resource Protection Act. So now into the big question, what are we proposing on this site? The first thing we're proposing is a new 3,330 square foot administration building, which we are kind of tucking in here on the southern part of the site, in between the existing developed area and the wetlands and the Cushing-Briggs frontage. This will be an access drive. This is the second access that has been discussed that would connect to South Freeport Road. And there would be some limited parking provided in front of the building, since this building is located outside the fence secured area of the wastewater treatment facility. We are including proposed stormwater management because we are adding impervious area to the site by doing this development. We are also adding landscaping. This is what we're using to provide that vegetated buffer so that we can provide as much buffering from the adjacent residential neighborhoods as possible. Right now, we're proposing approximately 24 trees and shrubs would be installed along the south side of the proposed developments to help screen these developments and the property from our neighbors on Cushing-Briggs. We also will have utility improvements as part of the project, as well as site lighting, because we want to make sure the site is safe and accessible for all the operators and public that go there. So here I just want to start with just some renderings and elevations of what the proposed building looked like. As Lauren talked about, this would be more of your residential construction, stick frame, single built with asphalt shingles and siding. This front elevation, as I have it labeled, just to go back, is really the elevation that would be on the inside of the site. This is what you would see when you pull up and park at those parking spots and go in. We've created a nice, warm, welcoming spot, so it's very clear where the public enters the site. One of the benefits of putting this building out there is to have a very specific controlled location for anyone who does visit the site. There are a lot of hazards at a wastewater treatment facility, so we don't want just anyone showing up for safety reasons. We want them to come in, meet the staff, and the staff will bring them to appropriate locations, or they stay within this building, which has been designed to support the public. These are the side and rear elevations. So again, this rear elevation would be facing and backed up to the existing vegetation that would remain. This west elevation is what you would see on the access road as you're coming in, and this east elevation would be facing into the existing wastewater treatment facility. And these are also just some 3D renderings that we put together to show a little different perspective. Items that are included in here would be the office space for the administration, a large meeting room. There is a Board of Trustees meeting that can have anywhere from 8 to 12 to 15 people, so we need sufficient space for that. That is kind of what's indicated here. There's also space for SCADA, which is critical computer infrastructure that the operators use to maintain and monitor not just what happens at the plant, but also what happens at all the pump stations and the collection system out and throughout the town. There will also be the state-of-the-art lab. There'll be improved locker room facilities, as well as small break areas. So to go briefly into some of the design elements that are specific to the site plan approval, we are proposing a second driveway, and we have done our best to make it meet all of the standard dimensional requirements of the Section 512 of the Freeport zoning ordinance. So it is a two-way non-residential road, so we're setting it at the 22-foot width. We have designed it and graded it so that we have a no more than a 2% slope at the roadway to improve sight lines, and then a max slope of 5% as it enters the site. We're locating it more than the 50 feet from the adjacent intersection of Cushing-Briggs and South Freeport Road. And it's also well beyond the 100 feet from the existing driveway that's located on the north side of the property. We've aligned it so that it intersects at a 90-degree angle with South Freeport Road to also improve sight distance. And we've made sure that we can meet those standard distance for that, the standard sight distance for that 35 mile per hour speed limit within South Freeport Road. The result of this project will add impervious area, and as a result, the district is committing to doing stormwater management and treating that additional stormwater runoff. So if I go through the area summary real quickly right here, the existing site has about 3 acres of developed area of which 1.27 is impervious. These proposed improvements will add just under an acre, about 0.85 of developed area, which totals a net of 4.4 additional areas of impervious area. So the total new developed area will be 3.85 with about 1.6 impervious. I know, lots of numbers. That's for the third-party engineer to review in the stormwater management plan we put together. But I just wanted to share so you know that we're looking at all these details and making sure we're meeting the ordinance. We are proposing a couple different systems to manage the stormwater runoff. The first one we are doing is adding a drip line BMP filter. So really this is that stone edge you'll see around the perimeter of the building. That's intended to collect the runoff from the roof. And that will go through a filter media and eventually connect into the rest of the system. For the stormwater that runs off from the proposed road, parking area, and kind of the other developed areas, that will go into a grassed under-drained soil filter, which really acts the same way. It goes in there, it filters through a soil media filter, which pulls out particulates. And then eventually all of this goes into a drain and ties back into the internal stormwater collection system within the site, and then eventually discharges directly to the Harrisseekit. So none of this goes into public stormwater collection system. It's all internal to the site. We've developed this so that we are meeting water quality standards per the town ordinance as well as the main DEP Chapter 500 standards. And we've also developed to make sure that the peak runoff rates from this proposed development do not exceed existing conditions that are there today. And finally, we will need to provide some small utility improvements to this site. Luckily, we have access to public utilities in these areas to outfit this new building. In the red, probably the easiest utility for us to deal with is sewer, since we're at the wastewater treatment plant, so we'll be able to tie in a sewer lateral right into the existing influent. We are working with Maine Water to confirm exactly where, but we will pull from existing public water so that we can provide water to the new building. And then we will pull communications and power from South Freeport Road, as well as we will need to connect it back to our existing building because of some of those SCADA and other items that I talked about before. We also are providing site lighting because of the driveway access and parking. We have proposed full cutoff lights, so everything will go down. We did submit a photometric plan showing that we're not exceeding, I believe, 3.7-foot candles at anywhere on the site, and we have 0 light trespassing at property lines and things like that. So that's really what I wanted to do today for an overview. I appreciate your time, and I think at this point I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
The one question I had looking at the site plan to get started, there's a white area in the existing conditions along South Freeport Road that doesn't delineate anything. Like, why is that?
It was an area after we did some of our initial investigations and determined that were wetlands in there. We knew it was non-buildable, so we just didn't have that area surveyed as part of the initial survey that we did on the site.
I see. Okay.
Could you explain phase 2 and phase 3 broadly? I mean, are we just looking at one component and you'll be back for phase 2 and phase 3, or what's the big picture?
Yes, that is correct. So if I go back to the original plan, phase 1 is the admin building and the access road. Phase 2 is really, and I'm just going to get my laser pointer again, a lot of the process improvements to within the plant itself. At a high level, it includes improvements to the 2 chlorine contact tanks. So within existing infrastructure, we'll be doing improvements to the processes within there. It includes, once all the administrative spots are out of the control building, reconfiguring that better for some blowers and pumps and things like that that we need to improve process. There is also another building that will be proposed up here. That is for solids handling. So that would be what we would be coming back for to you guys at the project review for phase 2 of this upgrades. So that would be another building that we'd put over here where all the solids handling, dewatering, septage receiving, putting all of that stuff in one spot. Phase 3 is the pump stations. That's beyond this site. That's at all the little collection areas throughout the city and doing improvements to pump capacity, layout, things like that. That would be phase 3 of the project.
What's the timing on phase 2?
For when we'd come back or when we hope it goes to construction?
Both.
I think that would be coming back later this year, probably late fall timeframe for it to go to bid. Because of this funding, it has to be publicly bid sometime next year.
How large is the building that's going to be added in Phase 2?
We just talked about it today, and I should know, it's similar in size, I believe, to what we're proposing for the admin building. I think it's about 40 feet by maybe 70. It's still very much in the design phase. We're in very much preliminary design, which is why we didn't submit on it at this point, because we're still figuring a lot of that out.
Could you point again to it?
That building would go up here. So we would remove this garage and this paved area that's existing, and it'd be put in this location.
That's number 2 phase or 3?
That's Phase 2.
And 3?
Phase 3 is not within this site. These are all the individual little pump stations that are located throughout the municipality.
So the changes you anticipate in Phase 2 would not be visible from the street or from abutters?
Correct. That's really within the existing tree line.
And is that expected to be within the currently existing drive entrance?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that is proposed within Phase 2 is within existing infrastructure. So it's work right within these tanks, within this headworks building, and then work in this area to improve the solids handling. The goal for as much of it to be within the existing fence line. We might need to bump it out a little bit to just make sure that everything fits and we have clearance around there. But it would all stay, as much as we can keep it in this fence line and minimizing vegetation removal to the greatest extent we can.
Could maybe the gentleman before you comment on the necessity for a second driveway? You said something about it's good to have a second driveway in case of emergencies. Do you have examples of emergencies that have occurred in the past that were not handled as efficiently because you didn't have that road? And is it a nice to have or is it a must?
I'll start with the first question.
Okay.
The new administrative building, as we noted to you, is going to be outside of the fenced area for the plant. By Homeland Security, we have to have the treatment process a secured site, and that's what it is. And that is not a public access facility, as we've noted. The admin lab building is a public building. It's an administrative function. It's ancillary to the treatment process. That is going to be located outside the fence because it is a public building. The board holds its meetings in the evenings, once a month, plus whatever special meetings they call. That's nighttime. We need to meet ADA standards. We need to have some parking close to the building to abide by those standards for our ratepayers who want to come to the meetings. Because it's a separate building outside of the fenced area, it needs to have its own access. It needs to have its own driveway so the public and our Board of Trustees and the ratepayers can come to the meetings when we have them, and not within the site of the treatment facility. There have been occasions in the past where, because of weather emergencies, we've had blowdowns in the access driveway that we have, and it's the only one we have. And our people got called in on emergencies. When you lose power in town, we lose power to a lot of our pump stations. We have to have staff come in, hook up portable generators to the vehicles, and get their butts out there and plug the generators into the pump stations to get them going and keep them going. Because even though you lose power, particularly if you're on public water, you still have water. So people still use the facilities. And the water still gets to the pump stations. And that is our mission. That's what we are. We are emergency responders. We need to get in, need to get out. And if we have more blowdowns during an emergency, we need to have another access. It's just the right thing to do.
But that second access would not give them access to this secured area to fix whatever needs to be fixed. If the blowdown's in your existing driveway, having this second road isn't going to get them any closer to the secured area.
Actually, well, because that second driveway is going to connect to the existing paving system. There's going to be a gate there. They'll have to go through a gate on the south side now. That would be next to the admin building, because we still have to keep that facility gated all the way around. But they will have, that's the secondary access that we're looking for. They can't get in the main entrance. They will come in for the driveway for the admin building, come around the backside, open that back gate, and be able to get into the facility to access the tools and equipment and materials they need to respond to an emergency.
Okay, and that can't be done in reverse. If you're having a night meeting, people come in, the gate is opened, and they come to the administrative.
Well, the goal is to keep them outside of the treatment facilities.
Right.
It really should not be there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did I answer your question fully?
I think you did.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got more questions about the driveway because that seems to be the elephant in the room here. You mentioned that there are blockages occasionally, and you said there are some. I think it might be helpful for us to get an idea of, just more than anecdotally, how many times in the past year, 5 years, has this been an issue, and how long does it take to resolve? Is this really an emergency, to get in there? So that's one. Another one is traffic counts. How many vehicles are going in and out? What kind of vehicles are going in and out? What kind of vehicles would be going in one driveway versus the other driveway? You mentioned being able to have public access to a meeting place. I think I counted there are only 4 parking spaces that are public. And if you're talking about having public access to the board and for meetings, if the gate's closed, where is everybody going to park if they can't get into the secured area that you're saying is an issue today? So another one, too, is parking inside. I guess that goes to parking inside the fence and outside the fence, which you're currently parking inside the fence. I understand that. But if you're making a case for another driveway and parking, and it's going to be outside the fence for parking, you're not going to meet that need.
What I said earlier was we don't want the public going to the facilities. That doesn't mean we wouldn't have them. We're going to be limited by the site to how many parking spaces we can add with this new building. You are aware of that. If you guys want us to add more, and if we are allowed to add more, then maybe we will. But let me answer your first question. I'm going to have to check with the superintendent and get back to you. Find out how many times we've had a closure on the entrance because of storm events. Not many, but it doesn't take many. We are a public utility. We are governed by both EPA and DEP. And any spill of wastewater outside of the pipe or pump station is reportable. And it's a hazard, and it's not good for the health of the town. It's not good for the groundwater, and it's not good for the streams and rivers and storm drains within the town. So it is an emergency when we lose power and we have pump stations that can't pump while they're wet well, which is where the water comes in, because you don't pump 24/7. You have a wet well that stores the water, and maybe you can pump 5 times a day, 10 times a day. Depends how large the facility is. But that water continues to come in, and it's going to overflow. It's going to overflow the facility, overflow overground, and that's an emergency. And it only takes one. Our job is to prevent all of them. That's our mission. That's what we're here for. And that's why our people are on call, and that's why we are classified as emergency responders. We want to do what's right by the town. We want to do what's right by our mission. That's why we want a second access.
Can I just
We need it.
build on that just to clarify? So if I'm understanding it right, in an emergency, the response that needs to take place is to physically get a generator from this facility and move it to a pump station? That's what the emergency is, as you describe it?
Well, that can be one of them. I mean, that's the most major one. You could have simply a line blockage on Main Street where the covers are literally blown off the manholes because the water's coming out. So we have to get to the plant to get what's called a jetter, so we can get in there and flush the lines, open up the blockage, get flow where it's supposed to be. That will be a second critical emergency that we deal with.
Okay.
Those are the two worst ones.
Okay,
You
thank
could
you.
have a collapse of a sewer line that creates a 10-foot hole in the street. That has to be dealt with. Not going to wait till the next morning. You know, we're gonna call Cooker or Labby or somebody, and we're going to get them over there.
Sure.
You know, along with all the lights we need and the people. And then you could have emergencies at the plant itself. You're dealing with a plant that can do 900,000 gallons a day, and it can go down. It's only equipment. Equipment fails sometimes.
Sure.
You need to get our people in there.
Thank you
You
for the
need to be able to do what we do.
I
Thank you.
just want to clarify one thing. I think, there's a lot of public interest in this project, even beyond the scope of the board. We typically don't get into questioning the needs for a proposal. People come to us for different things all the time that they feel they need for their business operation. So I think it's fine to ask the general questions, but the role of the board is to review this under the criteria of the zoning ordinance and under section 602. I do, so design, site distance, buffer, all those things. I think, Todd, you brought up a good point. Like, this is an office building and we have regulations on that, and they need to demonstrate that, A, they meet the standards of the ordinance, but I think if they're saying they need it for something, showing they're still going to meet that, but we need to stay focused on
Thank you.
Very good.
what's in your purview, even though
Yep.
there is a lot of public interest in it.
Thank you.
Leonard, I'm sure you said in your introduction, what's your position with the sewer district?
I am the construction manager for the upgrade project. It's a temporary, 2-year, 3-year position. Because I have been involved with a number of those in your neighbor to the north
Thanks.
for 37 years. No.
I have a question.
Thanks, Linda.
I might ask the engineering representative. I'm looking at the plans, I'm looking at C-0-103, which is the landscaping plan, because it seems to be the easiest for me to read, because it's really fine in here. But it's kind of getting back to the parking issue. The existing building, the control building, has what looks like a parking lot across from it.
Yes.
That looks at least 10 spaces. So if everyone's going to be moving from general working time and everything in the control building to this new building, it seems that you would need many more parking spaces to accommodate all those people at the new building. So having 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces as shown is going to have to change, it seems to me. Is there a plan that shows a expanded parking?
So what I will say is, kind of to follow up on something Leonard said, is the security around the site is to control access to it, not necessarily to restrict it, but to control access. There is a gate. This access and building will be accessible to the treatment plant and everything inside that fencing, because they're still operators. They need to be in there. We did have some concept. I think Caroline indicated there had been other concepts that had floated around, and I apologize for any of that confusion. It's all in the process of developing a design. And we did have more parking outside the fence. But being respectful to our neighbors and some of the concerns they brought up, we heard from them they'd like us to minimize that. So the thought would be we would compromise, and between the parking directly in front of the building and then opening up that gate in those higher use times and using those existing 12 spaces within the site we get closer and meet the standard for an office building of this size. So that would be for those busy meetings. There's about 4 to 5 staff that are at the site regularly, so we have ample spaces for the people who are there every day. But then to meet those bigger needs, that's when the overflow would happen, that gate would be open, and the district could control who comes in and out and where they park on the site.
So just to clarify, for an office, they need, per the ordinance, section 514, they need 1 space per 300 square feet as calculated by the ordinance. We have a very specific way how we calculate square footage. In no case shall there be less than 1 parking space for every 1.5 employees. So they have a very specific standard that they need to demonstrate that they meet. I think if, there's conversation about how they're going to utilize it more, we never like to see more parking than we need, obviously, but understanding how they're going to use it on the site. But that's the minimum standard that the board would need to review this under.
I think I'm kind of relating this to other applications. I know we don't compare, but when things start one way and then after 1 meeting and 2 meetings and 3 meetings, there's this added, that added. So if there's a chance that you might need more parking, I think we deserve to see that at some point before approval is given.
So it seems to me from looking at this that the building's in the wrong place, and the access road should be completely scrapped. It's obviously problematic when you look at the broader surroundings of South Freeport Road and Cushing Briggs Road and put it into context and try to think of this as the whole thing as being harmonious. It's not, and it's never going to be, no matter how much talk about buffering. The building could be inboard more, I'm looking at the plan now, but, and could, if you looked at it more centrally located, say where the parking is on the site now, that could alleviate the issue of ingress to the building from the public side and containing the industrial side by, just manipulating the fence. And then by doing that, still use the same driveway, but create parking on what's effectively the more northerly edge of the site, or I guess that's westerly. And not have to have this road that goes in, and I think it's going to be problematic for everybody.
One thing I will say is the current parking area, the area in the middle, is the old leach field that they paved over, so there is concerns about constructability, putting a building over that. So that's one reason why we did not look at that area to construct new infrastructure on top of it.
But I think you're going to have to look at more options. And the building itself is definitely not harmonious with the surroundings. Whether it be the terrain or the surrounding structures, its scale is off, its fenestration is off, the type of windows that are used, even the color, which we can't talk about. It should not be a primary blue. There are just things wrong with this on all levels, including, while I'm talking, the way the plumbing fixtures have been allocated within the building for the preference of men over women. It just seems completely wrong to me.
Clarify, are we doing
Not design.
design?
This is not design review, this is only under section 602 site plan review. Are you referring to 602A, preservation of landscape, and 602B, relation of proposed buildings to the environment?
Yes. As far as I can go, I know, but it is important.
Yeah, you're right, you can't do color, and you can only do building design as it pertains to that section. I think you're getting constructive feedback on how you feel it's not harmonious is beneficial to the applicant. And then it is also concept. So this is where we want to identify these things. Like, they're not going to have all their parking figured out because it's concept and they want to get feedback. Obviously, there's a lot of public interest, but as, if you have concerns, at least to note them on a high level so they know what they need to be working on or what you want to look at a site walk would be beneficial. Obviously, they're going to have to show they can meet site distance and all of that. Did you look at other driveway locations and is site distance a concern in other locations there?
We did look at other locations, specifically onto Cushing Briggs Road directly, but that was feedback from the residents in the neighborhood that was not a preferred. And so to be a good neighbor, we then kind of get focused on being in South Freeport Road. And we are trying to deal with those natural resources, the wetlands and things that are in there, and trying to minimize and kind of squeeze our driveway in the best we can to meet all the standards and not negatively impact natural resources.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful if you were able to show the other pocket of wetland or environmentally sensitive areas that Jason was talking about with relation to the driveway, so they can better understand the streets. Yeah, I wasn't sure with the curves.
This dark line here is actually the 25-foot offset from the wetlands, and that's the buffer that we have to protect as part of the natural resource protection through DEP.
If you had, can you go back to the wetlands map?
Yes.
Is that in our package, by the way?
Yeah.
It is?
At least those pages that have the wetlands.
No, I'm that one there.
Is this,
This figure I do not think is in your package. No.
That's not.
Okay.
some wetlands are of a grade that you can't modify them at all? Is this a wetland that you can cut into up to 4,000 feet or anything like that?
No, this is a vernal pool as defined by DEP.
Got it.
A significant vernal pool or a regular vernal pool?
Regular vernal pool. We had a wetland scientist go out, FB Environmental, to verify that it is not significant, because that pushes our buffer to 250 feet. After 2 site visits, our wetland scientists agreed it was not significant. They have formally submitted it to DEP, and we are waiting for confirmation.
But it's a vernal pool for
It
sure.
is very much a vernal pool. There are a lot of egg masses in there.
Now, did you look at the possibility of having a spur off the existing driveway and then heading south, or heading towards Cushing Bridge Road internally within the property? So you still have only one view going in, and then
Would you be referencing like coming this way?
whichever way where you could avoid wetlands and approach a building, other than building a whole new driveway, and have it in enough that that turn is not even an issue with neighbors or anything, because there's already an existing road.
I will be honest, we did not evaluate coming off of this, partly because of the wetland and the ability to construct in this area, and also for the district's desire to have a secondary exit or entrance for emergency, and just to make sure it all continues to be accessible. But that's not something we've looked at this point.
It seems like doing that, you'd have a parallel road to South Freeport Road, where you'd have to have a lot more, you'd still have to have the tree buffering, but it would be much more of an obvious road in that parallel way, rather than the one entry in from South Freeport.
But it's
I
not
don't know which is better or worse, but,
Much more significant disturbance.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to get there. I've got one more question for you. So this property is in the Harrisika Historic District.
Correct.
What's the procedure that you think you have ahead of you on that?
So as part of obtaining the funding from USDA, we did an environmental assessment, which looked at all of the environmental, historical, different things along this property, as well as all of the infrastructure owned by the sewer district. We reached out to the State Historic Preservation Board, the Tribal Historic Preservation Officers, asked them to review all of the infrastructure. They came back, said there was they did not find that any historic properties would be impacted by the proposed upgrades that we were proposing. The USDA then does review of all that, the state engineer as well as the grant manager, and they did an assessment and did a finding of no significant impact for the proposed project.
So the Maine Historic Preservation Commission you identified the site as being within the historic district?
We identified the site as where we were going to do proposed upgrades, and we did acknowledge that some of the infrastructure that the district owns is within the historic district.
Yeah, can you, just because it's a check mark we need in a box, can you get that letter to us?
Yes, we can work on that.
In their next submission.
Yeah.
There's also I'm looking at the CD0102, there's a building remnants or something. It's so hard to read these plans only because what you're showing is dark, but everything else is so faded. So what is that building that is going to be?
They're remnant old foundations, of a previous building that had been located there.
Does that have was that looked at for any historic property value or, artifacts or anything over there?
As far as I know, what we've done is we reached out to the State Historic Preservation. Nothing was specifically asked about that foundation. But the property was identified and reviewed by the Historic Preservation Officer.
Because that's going to be taken out and paved over, it seems.
I'd like to just reiterate one thing. The phasing is always a red flag for us, and we've had experience in the past where we approve one phase, and then the applicant gets around to thinking through the second phase. They go, oh, we got to change a bunch of stuff from the first phase. That is not received well. I'm just...
Understood.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions from the board, or can we get into public comment? Okay, we're going to, if there is any public, yes, Leonard.
Can I make one last statement, please?
Yeah, come to the mic if you will.
Oh, thank you. You do understand what the district is. It's a quasi-municipal entity chartered by the state of Maine under private and special law, 1947, Chapter 60. In that charter, which is state law, gives to its trustees the sole authority to determine what it needs and where it needs relative to facilities for the district. In that vein, we have determined we need that second access. We determined we need to move the building out from the processes of the treatment plant. We have the 11 acres. It's the right thing to do. Make it easy and accessible for the public, for our ratepayers, for the Board of Trustees when they come to meet. That is all we're asking to do. But we need to meet our mission, and we need more than one access, much like your emergency facilities here in town do. Because we're a government entity also. We're not private. We have a mission to accomplish, and we're regulated and licensed to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to go to public comment, and we're going to limit it to 3 minutes per person. We ask folks to be mindful of what's already been said, to try to make this all as efficient as possible. Our town manager, Sophie Wilson, is going to run that clock, and when time's up, time's up. We don't want to be rude, but when time's up, time's up. We've been through this before.
Are you doing in-person or Zoom first?
Would you like us to do Zoom
You
first?
can do whatever you want.
We will do Zoom first.
Okay. If there's anyone on Zoom that wants to comment, please raise your hand.
And please identify, everyone, please identify yourself and give us your address.
Well, that was easy. No
Okay.
hands. Go ahead.
My name's Michael Ashby. I'm chairman of the sewer district, chairman of the board. My question is, exactly what is this board's duty? Is it decide the color of the windows, or what the building looks like, or where the road should be, or how many trees should be cut down, or what the criteria is? I mean, when when these engineers present this work to you, if it fits the criteria, is it up to the board to decide to change what they don't like?
I was going to give a summary of what our scope is. I mean, you have a job to do for the town, and so do we. And Section 602 has about 8 different types of features of your project that we need to review, and they're all fairly broad. And we need to be satisfied that they're all met by your application for us to approve your project.
Correct.
I'll just go through them. I'm sure you may know them, but the review criteria are broadly preservation of landscape,
Yep,
relation of the proposed buildings to the environment,
yep,
vehicular access, parking and circulation, surface water drainage, utilities, advertising features, special features, such as truck loading docks or whatever's particular to your activity, exterior lighting, emergency vehicle access, landscaping, and then a list of 7 different types of environmental considerations. So we have to go through all that as part of our process.
so by the building not fitting in to the area, is that part of your criteria? I mean, if our building meets zoning ordinance,
No.
or does it not?
Your building, we don't get into the type of review of your building like we just did on Main Street
Well,
where.
one of you gentlemen said he didn't like the looks of it and didn't like where it was. And
We definitely
it
have
didn't
to-
fit in the area it needed to be. So I'm just trying to wonder, is any of what we presented what's needed for the board?
We're going to get into the details of this, but to respond
Okay.
to your specific question, proposed structures shall be related harmoniously to the terrain and to existing buildings and land uses in the vicinity which have a visual relationship to the proposed buildings. So, this is,
I mean, this is also, we're moving up in the future. I mean, if we were back where we were, we'd still all have outhouses. I mean, if we can't stay here, we have to move forward. And so hopefully we're trying to do the best we can for everybody.
we appreciate your work.
That's all I have to say. Mike Ashby.
I don't think your clock's working.
I'm Alan Karen. I'm a resident of, I got to get my pages in order. I'm a resident of 5 Weston Point, which is off Cushing Briggs. And you just got a taste of how difficult it has been to make changes happen. This whole meeting for me has been a kind of deja vu, because 20 years ago I was sitting in one of those chairs as chairman of the planning board and spent hundreds of hours in these kinds of hearings over a 5-year period. So you have my greatest appreciation and respect and my deepest sympathies as well. Look, we're a neighborhood that's a lot more diverse than people think. We've got small houses that used to be camps. We've got young families raising kids. We've got a lot of families with kids like ours who've just gotten out of school and gone on. And we've got retirees and people who have been very successful. A couple of months ago, I'm going to watch that clock and try not to talk like the ad people on the radio. We're going real fast. A couple of months ago, about 45 of us met at the South Freeport Church when we discovered the plan to put the road into Cushing Briggs. And we have been, since then, extremely focused on the issue of this second egress, where it goes and where it could go. And secondly, on buffering, which is extremely important. I want to credit the district for meeting with us and for coming up with an alternative to taking the road straight into Cushing Briggs. That is not to say there isn't more work to do and it can't be done better, but we appreciate that. I also want to make clear that for us, for the group I've been working with, and I think a lot of people in the neighborhood, we support the overall plan. It's essential to modernize, to improve, to become more efficient, to produce better water quality. All great stuff. The concerns are really over elements of the plan, and as you know, there's a lot of controversy about the second egress. It's a major step forward, and again, we're grateful for that. But you're asking the right questions. Is it need or want? Can it go somewhere else? Are we willing to think about any of these things? Are we just going to get in a defensive crouch? So thank you for doing that. So that the road is one question. The other one, even more important or equally important to us, is the buffering. I'm running out of time. I gave you a letter that you got in your packet, I think, yesterday. It has a citation from the planning board motion 20 years ago when the sewer district applied for an expansion, which we voted unanimously at that time. And it said, you must produce a real buffering plan with the neighborhood, bring it back to the planner, bring it back to the planning board. As far as we can tell, neither were done. So let's complete that work. Let's get a real buffering plan, not a string of...
I got to shut you off, Alan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. I'll finish it next time.
Anybody else? Okay, we should have voted, by the way, to open a public hearing.
No, it's not a public hearing.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Pull the microphone away from you. Okay. My name is John Egan. I'm 38 Curtis Road. I'm not a ratepayer for the sewer district, but I'm a taxpayer in the community. I serve on the town council this year. I'd like to measure chair. I'm listening on the hallway with my friend here. I just want to explain a little bit of context. Recently, in the past 3 years, let's say, the town council has really warmed up to a better relationship with the Freeport Sewer District in terms of planning, conversation about growth and improvements to the plan. And we have had several discussions at the council, so I can say that it's more than just my opinion, that we are extremely pleased to see the success and the hard work that went into their proposal for getting the $20 million award to upgrade. It's always remarkable to see a public planning unit plan for the future and then go ahead and execute on their plan and secure the funding so that that plan can continue long into the future, not just 10 years or 20 years. So we're committed as a council to working with the sewer district on its plans for improvements. It's a vital and essential element to the future of all of Freeport, not just the ratepayers. The future activities and growth opportunities that are going to happen in this community over the next 10, 20, 30 years are going to be absolutely dependent on a high-functioning, forward-thinking sewer district. So I just want to point out that that relationship has really improved. Took quite a hit with the passing of Lee, but I've had a chance to meet with the board and the new director, and looking forward to that progress going forward. And so I'm all in favor of their efforts to move forward and improve their plan, and confident that they have the right team in place to make the decisions that they need to make for that plan.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Wendy Whitaker, East Sandy Beach. I wanted to say that I support the updates to the plant because they're needed. I support the need for improving, preserving, and maintaining the evergreen buffer, but I question the need for the second egress. But now tonight it's being called an access, but before it was just a second egress. I think Mr. Donahue made some good points about manipulating the fence and keeping the existing road. And the current entrance could maybe be expanded. Thank you for considering that.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Michael Saucier. I'm at Cushing Briggs Road, number 13. At the June 17 presentation to interested neighbors, that's June 17, 2024, we asked Woodard and Curran about specific costs of the building and the driveway, and I'll call it a driveway because that seems to be what it is. Driveway in this $20 million budget that was prepared in 2022, the most comprehensive document that has been public to date. A room full of people in the community center were told these items, the building and the driveway, were not part of that budget or even part of that planning process. Were those costs added after 2022 and other costs related to the legitimate operational improvements deleted? We don't know. Is the sewer district consultant working to a plan to a cost rather than what a plan should cost? We don't know. The public is paying, taxpayers and ratepayers, and we don't know what for because it's been hidden so far. We would like the $20 million to be used for the best operational practices. That's clear. No dispute there. You might say that operations are outside your purview but we must all understand the big picture. You monitor and influence the town's direction of growth. What happens at Freeport's only sewer system and how it grows on this 11-acre site affects every project you approve and review. In that regard, this is an exceptional application. If you deny this applicant the second driveway, I suspect it wouldn't be the first time you saved an applicant from themselves, and not likely the last. It will, however, be exceptional. That decision will serve to protect an estuary, an historic district, and the sewer district's budget. All construction projects have unknowns. This sewer district needs to hear from the broader community that it must sharpen its focus on operational upgrades of significance. Once the plan as designed, presented here, leaves this room, there will be only more and more speculation that the Freeport sewer plan used federal dollars for purposes other than requested.
Mike, we have to cut you off.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, the board. My name is Barney Baker. I live at 7 Spruce Road, which has a barn, an accessory dwelling unit directly opposite Cushing's Brig. And so my property is arguably closest to this access road. But I want to, first of all, say that I applaud the work that the treatment plant is doing to upgrade their facilities. I would just offer that I think the access is in the wrong place. I'm a civil engineer. I've spent a career designing facilities. I think what's missing from this application is a traffic study. It's also in your purview to request that. It looks at vehicle access. It looks at pedestrian impacts. The South Freeport Road, it's quite a unique road within the town of Freeport. It's part of the Greenway, which is a accessible recreational route that goes from Florida to Maine. And so it's used by a lot of bicyclists. It's used by walkers. The folks, the young family that are in the barn where we have our property have a youngster that they take out and trail behind their bike. They push in a cart along the road there. And so I think that traffic study is definitely required. I can also appreciate that this is an emergency critical facility. And I think that we owe it to the treatment plant to produce some sort of risk analysis. I mean, if their access is blocked and they have to provide generators to remote pump station facilities, can those generators be put elsewhere and ready and to be engaged? It would certainly be a lot cheaper than building a second access road to do that. But in closing, I appreciate all the work that you do, that the treatment plant does, that our town councilors do to support the project. And obviously, we don't want to turn away $20 million. So I think there is a project here that we can all approve of, but I really have reservations from an engineering perspective and from a residential perspective about this second access.
Thank you. Anybody else? No other members of the public want to speak?
I'm Doug Leland, 29 Cushing Briggs Road. I too appreciate the way that the neighborhood has come together with the sewer district to try to work out some solutions here. I'm not an expert on sewer plant operations, but I've heard bits of it over the last 9 years as my wife has been a trustee on the board for the sewer district. But I too have a lot of questions, and I'm hoping you will get to some of those questions during these hearings. I have not been able to get my arms around a rational reason for second access into that plant. It has been asked, how many times has there been a tree fall? One answer was once since the sewer plant was built. Another answer was 5 times in the last 10 years. How many times did somebody come with a chainsaw in order to clear the road? How many times did you just call Public Works and have them come out and clear the road? So I'm not sure I understand that. I don't understand the inside the fence and the outside the fence. Lenny can speak to Brunswick, but I've learned a lot about sewer plants just by looking at Brunswick's website, because they tell you everything you want to know about a sewer plant. And they show you aerial views, and their administrative building is right next, is part of the infrastructure. Everything is inside, as I see it, everything's inside the fence. There's only one access, and they are servicing a whole lot more people than Freeport is. My experience is that the public really doesn't go into the sewer plant. I think the most people that have been in there in the last years that I'm aware of have been the last few weeks when we've had meetings with the neighborhood. I don't understand the amount of parking. I don't understand the location of the parking. It just seems like there's a desire to have a new admin building in a different place and a separate access, but I don't understand the rationale for it. And I'm hoping that in your process you will begin to uncover some of that so it makes a lot more sense to me and to some of our neighbors as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to see if there's anybody else from the public, Len. No other public comment? Okay, Len?
Yes, I worked for Brunswick. The treatment plant is all within its own fence. The admin building is not within the fence. The 2 buildings that serve what's called the collection system staff, that's the people that go out and maintain the lines, the pump stations, all the facilities outside the gate. That's not within the fence line. The main road coming into the plant is a town-owned street, so they maintain it and keep it open. The district owns the bottom half of it that goes to the plant and to the admin building and the collection systems facilities. So I just want to make that clear. The admin building at Brunswick is not within the fenced area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any guidance we can give the applicant?
I would suggest a traffic study, more detailed landscaping plan, lighting plan, and a site walk.
We'll get a lighting plan and a landscaping plan is in the application.
Yeah, there was a lighting plan in there.
I think a sidewalk's in order. Everyone feel the same way? Yeah. And try to do it soon in August with the.
Yeah, so I think on the site walk, I think you'd want to kind of understand the boundaries of the wetlands as it pertains to road location, the location of the proposed boundaries of the road and parking and building. We would, I'll work with Megan to come up with a spot to meet. If we're going through the woods, we would ask that you clear a path that's open enough for the board to walk. Recently had a bad experience with that. In the public, it would be a public meeting. If you got a mailed notice for this meeting because you're within 500 feet, you will get a mail notice for any future meetings and the site walk. If you're beyond that area, it will be a publicly noticed meeting. Agendas posted on the town website. Do you guys want to look at some dates and times? I think are you thinking you want to do it with a combined special meeting date in August?
How about if we have a,
Can I ask you a question before we talk about times? When we would go, will we be able to see from some distance, I assume, where the other buildings are and the other, I guess we're going to be, whether we come in on that access road that's already there, or we go through, cut through the grass and the brush to get to where it's going to go. I think it would be important to see that relationship of both of the access areas to where the fence area is. I guess we don't get to go behind the fence, but at least be able to see what's going on from some viewpoint.
we'll have full access to the site of the sidewalk, right?
Yes.
And if you could, okay?
Including seeing, we can see where the things are, but we don't expect to go beyond the fence, do we? Inside the fence? Yeah? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And Megan, if you can maybe give us some guidance on what we might see in Phase 2 at that time, just generally, that would be helpful.
Do they realize that if we go beyond the fence, then if, say, there are 20 people with us, everyone's going to have to go also?
It's a public meeting.
Yeah, so, as long as that's legal? Okay.
I think we may have some other general comments as well, but since we're on the topic of setting a meeting, how about if we have a 5 o'clock site walk, and then hopefully a one-item agenda back here to do 182 Main Street, the one we tabled.
Do you think 45 minutes would be enough for them to do that, or they need more time?
For the site?
That should be sufficient.
So the question is, who's got 5 o'clock to 6:30 open?
what day?
When?
Should be August, not August 17th, right?
Can it be before the 17th, 19th?
I'm sorry, this August 17th.
17th is Saturday.
Saturday.
I know, well, before
sorry,
that.
Sorry, I think of it.
I would push for the opposite side of the month, I'm afraid, but.
Shoot. So how?
Or early the week of the
7th
9th.
is the comp plan meeting.
How about Wednesday?
21st?
Oh, sorry, I was thinking it was the 17th, that was this month. I'm not here that week of the 18th. Do you have coastal waters on the 14th, Todd?
I'm going to be out of town from the 14th to maybe the 28th or 29th.
And I will be out of town on the 14th. that
The
week
7th,
as
we
well.
can't accommodate another meeting because we have a planning board workshop and then a planning board meeting already.
Does it have to be a Wednesday?
It doesn't have to be, but we do need to be able to find meeting space and not conflict with other
What have you got?
The 28th
municipal.
Of,
August.
like it to be as soon as possible.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to. Let's see here. The Tuesday, the 13th, we have a council meeting. Bless you. How about?
Did you say the 13th?
No, we can't do the 13th. There's a council offsite meeting that day. How about Monday, August 12th? Sustainability has a meeting in here, but I actually don't think they're meeting this summer, or they might be able to meet in the conference room. So Winslow Park doesn't meet here. So we could have this room for the meeting and do a site walk before.
Which date?
Monday, August 12th at 5 o'clock.
I may have a conflict, but
I will not be able to attend.
Okay.
I can attend.
I'm just not sure.
Okay. Linda, are you free?
Yeah, we need a quorum to have a walk, so.
And I think we need more than a quorum on this one, maybe.
Yeah, it makes sense, you're right.
5 o'clock.
How about, I'm just getting yelled at, my microphone's not on, sorry, Tom. Thursday, August 15th, are people still away?
Still away.
I'm gone.
Okay.
any chance we could do it in the morning on like the 7th or something? I know we've got that afternoon meeting.
I feel like you could do the site walk. I feel like that's hard for a public meeting. We could also, oh wait, we're already down 2 members the week of the 20th, the week of the 19th, right, Todd? You're out that week too. Okay, so we're low on numbers that week.
Presumably, most of us are here on the 7th.
19th is good, the 12th is not good.
The week of the 19th is not good for Linda, so we're down to 1. I wouldn't be here, but I might be able to find someone to staff the meeting, whether it be Sophie or Brett, if you're gonna have one, but I wouldn't be able to be there on the sidewalk.
And which, one are you saying now?
I think the idea of splitting up the sidewalk from the meeting is something to do if it works to get everybody at the sidewalk.
Okay, so let's try morning site walk. Sorry, Linda.
But when are you talking now?
Now we have a lot more options if we go with a morning site walk. We need time to do notice. How about Wednesday, August 7th?
Works for me.
Works for me.
For morning.
Morning.
Do you do 8:30?
Yes.
Jason?
I think so.
Okay.
Most likely.
Is that a Wednesday? Yeah.
It's Wednesday.
Wednesday, 8/7 at 8:30 a.m.
And you can be there also, Caroline?
I can be there.
Okay.
Well, and if we have a follow-up meeting and some of us are away, and we have the ability to Zoom the discussion, then we can hopefully have more people involved, even if we're not physically.
For the meeting.
For the meeting.
Yep.
What time did you say?
Which meeting?
8:30 on the 7th.
Meeting to discuss.
I'm fine. I could be there.
Okay.
So site walk of the Freeport Sewer District scheduled for Wednesday, August 7th, 8:30 a.m. Public will be invited to attend. I'll work with Megan. We'll come up with a good meeting spot. I'll say carpooling is encouraged. Our neighbors to walk because the parking will be limited on site. We will need to stay on public property as part of the viewing. So if I think there's concern for preservation of landscape, we could look from the other side of the right of way, but we need to stay on the site and the public property, not abutting properties is my point. Okay. Do you want to wrap that up and then talk
Yeah,
about
let's-
other meetings?
We'll come back to the
Okay.
meeting. So for the sidewalk, Megan, can you flag the corners of the building? If it's not too much trouble, flag the setbacks for the vernal pool and anything else that we're likely to talk about?
The point of entry for the second road.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do our best to try to get everything.
Try to
flagged up
cut
there.
a path from where
tell the-
you think we're going to go.
Tell the ticks to go away.
Yeah.
So I have a couple comments after everyone else has given their guidance.
Before we, to address the comment that was raised already, in terms of requesting the traffic study, I know that is one step that's beyond the standard application materials, and I think that piece wasn't very specific after it was brought up. So do we need to take formal action to request that, to queue that up? Because I think that is, I mean, I agree that that's an appropriate request.
Site plan review, though, is what we're doing, right? Aren't we
Yeah, but
doing-
the traffic,
Yeah.
it kicks in there. I agree. I feel like the question is, what do you want for a traffic study? And I personally feel I'd be better equipped to understand the question after the sidewalk.
I agree.
You cool with that,
There are
Jim?
only 3 houses and 3 cars going by each day. I have no idea what's.
But
mean-
if that's what it is, that kind of answers the question about to what extent that this is impairing, circulation that harms neighboring properties.
So
But I think being able to confirm that it's 3 houses going,
Whatever,
3 cars
yeah.
going by is a huge part of what we need to determine to understand the application of the parking and circulation test or the vehicular access question.
I'm just going to look at the submission requirements because we don't typically see like full-blown traffic studies for stuff
Yeah,
that's this
it's not in
small.
our submission requirements. I think there's only a requirement to provide us site distances from the new entryway.
I guess my if you have a question about the intensity of traffic,
I mean,
Well, maybe I understand your question better. It's about like trying to pinpoint more specifically what we're asking them to study.
Well, yeah, so the ordinance requirement for a brand-new large project on undeveloped, which really is kind of what they submitted here. The new entrance proposed, proposed site distances at the entrance, estimated peak hour traffic to be generated by the proposal. Those are the two criteria of what they are required to submit for traffic. However, you do have the vehicular access standard about the proposed layout point to avoid unnecessary impacts on existing vehicular and pedestrian traffic patterns, special consideration given to access point, adequacy of adjacent streets, traffic flow, site distance, turning lane, existing and proposed signalization, which they wouldn't trigger signalization, pedestrian and vehicular contacts, and then reference to site distance. So I feel like that might give them some guidance of what you are looking for.
Well, it seems to me, based on feedback from the residents, you're talking about 4 employees coming in every day, and once a month at night having a meeting. And I don't know how many neighboring houses there are, but it doesn't sound, I mean, on the face of it, like there's a big impact. So my sense was it wasn't so much the impact of amount of traffic as it was what it's going to look like in this historic district. That's what I took from comments, but.
That's more along the lines of my concern, Jim. Caroline read subsection C. Subsection D is about impact on neighboring properties for traffic circulation.
Yes, I think we can give her guidance to look at not only the estimated traffic trip generation, but the standards of 602 C and D, vehicular access and parking and circulation, to see what kind of things the board will be looking at.
I guess you can anticipate we're going to want some peer review on this. Does the board really feel like we're ready to spell out that question right now?
Can I just get some confirmation, though, related to that? The new access road, if it's put in, I'm assuming, once again, I shouldn't have assumed, but I'm asking, it's really going to that administrative building? Any larger trucks, waste disposal equipment or anything will still continue to be on the existing entry that's there? So we're not talking about adding large trucks and other types of sewer facility, maintenance equipment, things like that.
You are 100% correct in that assumption.
Okay.
This project is not proposing to add any trips or any traffic to it. We're not adding additional features or things to the facility. We're better rearranging what they have or how they operate. And the existing access will still kind of be the operational access, the operation sides of things, the sludge hauling trucks, probably the main operator's access and things like that. This new access road really will be used by the limited staff who work at the admin building, and that once a month when there's a trustee meeting, or should a vendor decide to visit the site because they want to sell the district something, they would have a place to access. Someone at the admin building would greet them, and then they would be let into the facility, as needed and things like that. So not increasing the traffic, not increasing the number of vehicles visiting the site a day. Really just the vehicles that are using the current access road will kind of be split based on their occupancy between the two access points.
Anyone else on the board have any other feedback for the applicant?
I would just kind of chime in to add that when we're looking at the elements that we're applying, the issues about relation to the environment, I think at least some of the concerns that we've heard so far are hard to apply to that, given the setback from the road, given basically if all you're seeing is a driveway cutout, which is in many respects presumed as part of a development to an otherwise undeveloped site, then everything else is hidden from view. The ordinance doesn't give us a lot of flexibility to say what does or doesn't have, what they do or don't do with their property. So I'm concerned about the ability to use that as a basis to dictate what does or doesn't happen there. Similarly, on the issues of access and parking and circulation, and I think this is one of the reasons why I was particularly interested in understanding parking issues, is that of all the comments that we've heard, which are really helpful context about how this is the wrong place in terms of the location of a secondary way. The explanation that I haven't heard yet is why. And in order for us to say that this site plan is located incorrectly, it needs to be somewhere else, we need to be able to enunciate it's, because it causes adverse impacts to neighboring properties. And I'm struggling to see that with what's before us. I'm hoping that maybe the site review and maybe some future traffic work will help us better understand like the concrete ways in which that is an issue. But I'm afraid until we get to that point, it's really difficult for us to say what any property owner, whether they're a public owner or a private owner, does with their property if it otherwise fits within these narrow guidelines.
Helpful? So I'll give you a little bit of guidance, and I guess we're done. I want to go back to whatever the Maine Historic Preservation Commission, they're the local eyes and ears for the Department of Interior for historic districts. I'd like to get that letter, because if it's that simple, it's that simple. If it's a process where they do need to weigh in more, I'm going to be interested to know what their comments are before we get into the nuts and bolts of this. I understand the importance of having adequate vehicle access for critical infrastructure. You see it frequently. I don't understand the explanations that I've heard tonight. Don't give me an appreciation for why you need it. The fencing thing, whether it's public or private, I don't understand all that. So if that can maybe we can in the next presentation and at the sidewalk, if we can understand that better, it would be helpful. I don't get it yet. I'm worried about the buffering. We see buffering. We have landscape architects show us buffering all the time, and then you see it in real life, and it didn't get buffered. You got to wait 10 years. And so I'm really sensitized to the fact that going down Cushing Briggs Road, that you might see a lot. Now that would be helpful to see the sidewalk. And the last thing I just want to say is, it's common that applicants come in here and have neighbor concerns on the front end. But the norm for us is that we see a lot of cooperation between an applicant and the neighbors, with a real sense of cooperation and trying to get to a point where, and I guess in almost every instance, we by the time we've sunk our teeth into a project, the neighborhood is with it because compromises have been made, and we're not seeing that here. I'll just say this is a little bit different for us.
Well, I think it sounds like there have been efforts to come to. No?
Depends
where you are.
We hope to see all heads nodding, and that hasn't happened yet.
Oh, good.
Is there anything else? Anything else from the board? Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I move we close. Or is there anything
Carolyn, got anything else for us?
So you
Nice
had
job.
another.
Nice job, Sophie. Thank you.
You had another agenda item, which I'm guessing nobody wants to talk about tonight. You guys wanted to talk about items you want to send to the planning board for consideration, which I think we could put on the next agenda if you don't want to do that. I do think before we leave the meeting room tonight, if you're going to have an August meeting, we need to
Let's set it.
not leave until we get a date.
Let's set it.
A date for what now?
August meeting.
If you're going to do an
I
August.
thought you
The
were.
matter we tabled, we don't want to make them wait.
So I guess I could come in.
Necessarily need to be here for that one if I'm traveling.
Yeah, I could probably go in on the 20th.
Just read a quorum.
Do we,
Excuse us, please.
Can everyone leave, please?
We're still in our meeting.
And we'll pick you up if you're in the hallway. So I guess I'm out that week of your regular meeting. Like, we could accommodate a week, but we've scheduled stuff. Yeah, we've scheduled stuff, so we could not accommodate a full agenda regular meeting
One thing, yeah.
that week. I think if you want to do a special meeting just for this one carried over item. Or
Are you talking about 182?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but so I guess a special meeting date would be preferred.
I don't love the precedent of setting special meetings for an applicant that's in a hurry.
The problem is we're taking the month off, though.
I know it's unfortunate that we've taken a month off, but it really does send the wrong message that you know, it's like, oh, you're in a hurry, we're going to set our own meeting, we're going to set it on a different day of the week, we're going to set it, you know, on an as-needed basis. I'm afraid that might put a heavy burden on us in the future when an applicant tells, you know, has a severe
It's
issue.
been in our calendar that there was no meeting in August, so it's not like people were unaware that that's a possibility.
Yeah, and I mean, if you feel, you know, really strongly about that, I think if you wanted to add something back in, to Jim's point, like, we're only doing this because you canceled the August meeting. If you want to add an August meeting, but not set the precedent that we're going to rearrange everything and do a meeting, you could reinstate that August meeting, and if we get applications in, we could find a way to deal with that.
How long is this property entanglement thing going to take? Not for us, but.
The issue beyond the board,
That doesn't happen,
so,
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe they're not time sensitive.
yeah, we don't know that, but I think they do have a purchase and sale to obtain approvals and then make a decision that's best for them. And so I think this board's decision is tied to there, but I mean, that's their thing. So I guess I look to the board. August meeting's canceled. If you want to do a special date, which we kind of indicated you'd be open to, you can do that, or if you want to try to reinstate the August date, that's your other option, or if we can't make it work, you can wait until.
Is there an indication that the Shore Road thing is going to come back also? Because, you know, we don't want to start throwing things.
It's tabled at this point in time until they decide otherwise.
Yeah, I don't think we add other things. I'd like to do this. I understand Jim's point. On the other hand, real estate transactions are time sensitive, and people can Zoom if they want. You know, we don't have to have everybody in the room.
Just for notice, I will be out of the country, so I'm not.
Yes, then you won't be here. That's okay.
If we do proceed, I think I would just ask that we do it at our standard meeting time.
Yep.
You know, regular day of the month, regular time.
So that'd be on the 21st when Caroline can't be here.
I can probably Zoom, and if I can't, Sophie or Brett could cover for me.
Okay, that's August 21st. Are folks okay with that?
I can Zoom. We're talking August now, right?
August 21st, regular meeting date.
Yes, and this might be a chance for the 17-minute record to get broken.
Hope his architect comes through, right?
So this is just that one agenda
We have a
item.
lot of updates that night, just so you know.
No, you're not even coming to that meeting.
21st at
I
8,
am
at
now.
6 o'clock? 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
August 21st at 6 p.m.